Go ahead.
Okay, an announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and that is being conducted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 et sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Nora, please call the roll.
Mr. Berkowitz.
Here.
Mr. Jaskowitz.
Here.
Mr. Kaplan.
Here.
Mr. Mazzarella.
Here.
Mr. Reddy.
Present.
Ms. Snyder. Here. Mr. Willens.
Here.
Chairman Irakane.
Present.
We also have our board planner, Mr. Chadwick,
Present.
our board engineer, Mr. Holloway.
Here.
And our board attorney, Mr. King.
Present.
Start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in this evening's meeting, is there any member of the public that has any business to be brought to this board that is not on this evening's agenda? I hear none, see none. Okay, we have, 4 residential applications on the agenda this evening, and we're gonna, just for information purposes, one of our, so everybody understands this, Mr. Berkowitz, who's one of our board members, is home with, ill, but, we have him on a Zoom call, and he can see what's going on here, and he can also talk to us. So if you hear this voice coming from nowhere, it's not, we're not,
Possessed.
wanted in any way. Okay, first application, 2221, Alex Martinez, is a C variance to construct a front open deck porch.
Sir, raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony about to give before the board's true self you got. And for the record, you're Alex Martinez. You're the owner of 90 St. John's Avenue.
Yep.
Sir, you're sworn. You can have a seat. Please speak into the microphone. Mr. Chairman, you're sworn.
Okay, you're in an R3 zone. I believe an R3 zone has a minimum lot coverage of 15,000 square feet. And your lot, your,
It's got a big lot.
does he? I'm just looking to see where it is.
10,000 square feet?
6,000 square feet. So you have a substandard lot. I guess are you in Mount Tabor? I guess that is Mount Tabor.
How'd you guess? Yeah.
Yeah, so anybody that's got a 15,000 square foot lot there, something's wrong. Okay. So, tell us what you want to do and why you want to do it.
So currently on that portion of my house, we have a wooden staircase. The staircase is very steep because if you look at the lot. So if you look at the lot coming off of the house, we have an enclosed porch and there are stairs that go down. They're wooden and they're very steep. There's a walkway towards the street. Those stairs were there many, many years prior to my purchase of the property. They are dilapidated. They have come off the house, and we really don't want stairs there. So we are requesting to install a deck, an uncovered porch or deck, in lieu of the staircase.
You're removing those stairs and putting a deck in on the other side of the house.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Will there be stairs going off the deck? Or you
No,
just,
there are nope, just deck.
So how do you go in and out of your house?
So there is a entrance on the house on St. John's Avenue.
Okay. The little stairs that are kind of, go across the curb.
Correct.
Those stay?
Yes, those are cement stairs, and it's a cut into the
Right.
wall.
Just gonna leave them
Yep.
And they're gonna go to what? See, you're taking the other stairs out.
I'm sorry.
Where
They're
are they
just gonna
gonna
go
go
into
to?
the front yard,
Okay.
into the side yard.
there? Just gonna leave it there?
Yeah.
Put some plants on.
You're requesting a front yard setback of, I'm sorry, front yard on St. Peter's Road of 3.8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, you have 10.8 feet, and allowed is 40 feet.
The stairs actually go up further.
How does,
The deck you're adding on has nothing to do with that, Chairman, that's what I'm confused about too, so I don't have
The
any.
existing stairs go further out than his little deck.
uh-huh.
He's just tearing this out and
Sir?
putting a little deck there.
Is that gonna create any, site problems with people on the road? You
No.
getting that much closer to the, and that's the only way you can do it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions by the board?
Is this gonna have a roof on it? Or
No.
Just a straight?
Just a
with-
deck.
With a railing around it?
Yep.
Help me on your plan. You gotta almost have two front yards of St. John's and St. Peter's, right? Almost?
Almost.
Yeah, okay. So right now, you have 8 existing front yard on St. John's, and you're proposing 22 feet. Okay?
You mean on St.
This
Peter's?
isn't being changed.
That's not being changed. Okay, all right. Well, that's what this one is. Okay.
So there's an enclosed porch
Yeah, got it. Okay, thank you.
on St. John's.
Yeah, got it.
That's existing.
Got it.
And
Okay.
that's how you get in the house there. That's
Correct.
the house.
If you see, if you're looking on the site plan where it says 8.1, that's the entrance right there.
Okay. Is that your driveway there as well?
Correct. A little bit, yeah,
Or one of them?
correct.
Yeah, and, for the record, the township engineer has no, comments. Any other questions? Any members of the public have any questions of this witness on the testimony given this evening? Hearing none, to see none. There's nothing else you'd like to add, right? Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application? In support of this application? I hear none, to see none. Someone like to make a recommendation based on the conditions in,
Tearing out a dilapidated stairs, putting in a new deck, that's a good improvement to the property site. I would be voting in favor of it.
Someone frame a resolution?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Application 2221, Alex Martinez, 90 St. John's Avenue, Block 79, Z Lot 4, zone, in the R3 zone. I recommend the board grant the C variance to construct a front open deck porch with no stairs, contrary to section 430-35, column 4.
Second, ready. Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz.
Yes.
Jaskowitz.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Mazzarella.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Willens.
Yes.
Iverson.
Yes. Result is the variance is granted. We will
Yes.
memorialize this next month, and you'll be free to go. You thought you were gonna have problems?
Yeah.
Huh? Do we have a bad reputation?
So what did we miss?
Let's revisit this. Something. Alrighty. Application 2243 Patel, 6 Quaker Road. C variance to construct a 2-story addition, a 1-story addition, and a driveway expansion.
So if you could raise your right hand, you swear affirm testimony about to give before the board is the true self you got. And for the record, you are Mr. Patel, and you're the owner of the subject property, 6 Quaker Road.
That's fine.
All right, sir, you're sworn. You may have a seat. Please speak into the microphone. Mr. Chairman, the witness is sworn.
Thank you. Why don't you explain to us what you want to do?
Sure, thank you. So, I have a one-car garage home I purchased in 2003, 19 years ago. My family has grown, so I have 4 drivers now, 4 cars, and I only have a one-car garage. So I would like to extend that, add another car garage. Plus, 4 of us at times work from home now. 3 full-time work from home. My son comes on and off from college. So I would like to add upstairs office space. And after my father passed away, I brought my mother from India. She stays with her, so family has grown. So I would like to extend the other side of the house, extend my living room.
John, did you look at the driveway expansion?
Yeah. Explain the addition that is the one story. Is that going to be just bedrooms, living room? What is it going to be?
Living room extension.
Living room extension?
It's like living and family room, it's just one room. So it will be extended on the other side.
No new kitchens or any of that?
No.
So you've got an extended family, your mother-in-law, or your mother?
My mother.
Your mother and your family as well as your children. How many people does that come up to?
5.
5? The driveway that you have to the new garage, it's a little unusual in terms of how it's shaped. Meaning, when I come off, are you gonna widen the driveway along the street? The plan shows that it's just that widened pavement out the front of the garage and then it stops.
So that driveway is halfway into the...
Right, already.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna widen that.
Right, to accommodate the
But
second,
if you look,
not gonna bring it down to the street, I guess.
So you have it'll be
I
three
don't see
quarters.
how it's gonna work.
I had a driveway like that for a long time.
That kind of a,
So it's a flag lot.
Yeah, it's like a
Okay.
flag, yeah.
That's not a high-traffic road.
no.
It's going in and
I don't
out.
know, it looked like he'd be cutting into the curb on the street. He
Yes, sir.
extended the driveway all the way out.
I was just wondering why you didn't kind of taper it a little bit.
Hmm.
Is there a curb cut issue?
No.
Um,
Is there any fencing, landscaping on your property?
No fencing, no landscaping. There are like stones, paved stone I have put to go from driveway to the stairs.
Okay.
You're not changing any of that?
No.
have you, seen the, Justin Lizzo, our municipal engineer's report? Have you seen this?
Recollect getting it.
This is, doesn't the applicant get these reports?
Engineering is supposed to be sending them.
Well, I'll read it to you and then you can have my copy for
Here,
your
here's an
file.
extra copy for you.
It says, constructing both of the additions as well as the driveway expansion will all result in an increase in stormwater runoff from the property. The applicant is required to provide stormwater measures to mitigate the additional runoff with either seepage pits or other stormwater management devices. All underground roof leader pipes that will be discharging into the seepage pits shall be constructed using perforated pipe and placed in a stone bed in accordance with township ordinance unless otherwise directed by the township engineer. Proposed grading information has not been provided, however, the homeowner has assured me during my site visit there will be no changing of the grade on the property in any way. If the applicant decides to change the grade, a proposed grading plan must be submitted to this office for review and approval. An application for minor soil moving permit is required. Do you understand that you cannot create additional runoff? You have to deal with the additional building and impervious surface that you're creating. The stormwater has to be managed. Now, your contractor, and we will put in the resolution that you're going to, that these 2 points are gonna be required. If you have a good contractor, they should be able to tell you how this has to be done. You may need an engineer, I'm not an expert, but these are all things that you have to consider, okay? Do you currently have any problem with runoff either to your property or to any neighbor's property of any significance? I know if there's 4 inches of rain, everybody gets wet,
Yep.
but,
Yeah, so what I have is two roads, so 2 sides are roads.
okay,
When it rains, I have a gutter on the front,
right,
so the water sometimes when it rains heavily comes down and goes, but mostly otherwise, it's like a slope,
all right,
and then on the back, it's like flat.
right. But what he's saying is any additional drainage, any additional gutters will have to be put into, I call them dry wells, where you run the pipe underneath, they dig a pit, fill it with stone, cover it with some material, and then that, I have them in my house because we have drainage problems.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Yes,
question
Mr.
The township engineer was out there, was there any discussion about the site triangle, site distance around the corner? Is there any impact there on the, with the cars parked there? I don't know what size your cars are. Will that impact the site distance around that corner?
I don't think so. I did ask him that, and he said no, because right now I do park cars, but it doesn't go on the road. So they are in the driveway, but they don't go out to the road.
In the resolution, maybe we just want to notice the head township engineer, maybe just confirm that it's not going to impact the site triangle.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any members of the public have any questions, this witness on the testimony of this evening? Hear none, see none. There's nothing else you'd like to add, right?
No, sir.
Any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? I hear none and see none. Recommendation?
Yeah, this is a reasonable request to meet the family needs, so I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Someone frame a resolution?
Application 2243, Samir Bahai Patel, 6 Quaker Road, Block 325, Lot 7.03 in the R4 zone. I recommend the board grant C variance to construct a 2-story addition, 1-story addition, and driveway expansion, contrary to section 430-35, columns 4 and 10, and subject to the recommendations from the engineer.
Second ready.
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz.
Yes.
Jaskowitz.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Mazzarella.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Willens.
Yep.
Ira Kane.
Yes. Result is the variance is granted. We'll memorialize this at our next meeting, and then you'll be free to proceed. Good luck.
Thank you all.
Okay, 2246, Maria Pappas, 19 Truville Drive, seeking a C variance to construct a shed and patio.
And
Good evening.
Raise your right hand, you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board's true self you got. And for the record, you are the applicant, Ms. Pappas, and you're the owner of the subject property.
My parents own it.
Okay, and you have their consent to come here and make this application.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the witness is sworn.
Okay. I guess by now you know what we're looking for, so why don't you go ahead and tell us?
Okay, so I'm in the R2 zone in Normandy Village, and we're looking to put in a pavered patio, 20 by 25, and a shed, 10 by 12. My parents haven't done anything with the backyard. They're the original owners, 1968. So
Oh, wow.
they have the existing 4 by 6 concrete slabs, one in front of the patio doors and one in front of the laundry room door in the back. So we're looking to jackhammer those out and put the patio in.
Okay, just for the information purposes, you're in an R2 zone, but it's an R2 modified, because if you had the R3 zoning, you probably wouldn't be here.
I've been told that, yes.
It was somebody's infinite
Somebody's
wisdom,
been-
right, Mr. Correct?
Change the R2 zones.
The provision that created this lot doesn't exist anymore.
What is that?
All right, so
You're still here.
the minimus request, you're looking for an additional 1 percentage point of building coverage and like 3% of impervious coverage. I would assume your parents are elderly and this would be very convenient for them and,
Oh, my
So-
mother really wants the patio.
okay. Any other questions by the board? Any members of the public have any questions of this witness on testimony given? I hear none and see none. You told us everything, right?
Yes.
Are any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? I hear none and see none. Quick recommendation, de minimis request, very good, right?
Yep.
Okay, frame a resolution, please.
Application 22:46, Maria Pappas, 19 Trowville Drive, Block 753, Lot 40, Zone R2, recommend granting a C variance to construct a shed and patio, contrary to section 430-35, columns 10 and 13.
Second ready?
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz.
Yes.
Jaskowitz.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Mazzarella.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Willens.
Yep.
Hurricane.
Yes. Results of variance is granted.
Thank
Well, 3
you.
for 3 tonight, I'm doing good. We'll memorialize this next month and you'll be free to proceed, okay? All righty. Application number 2247, Constant Schletti? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm terrible with names.
Ma'am, if you raise your right hand, you swear firm testimony you're about to give before the board is true self you got? And for the record, you are the owner of the subject property, Ms. Shaletti? I'm sorry,
Gillette.
Gillette. Ma'am,
Like
you're
Gillette.
sworn, have a seat, please speak into the microphone.
Okay, another Mount Tabor.
Another mountain.
Are these air conditioners, they're replaced or these new?
These are new.
What is existing is it?
Right now, a window unit into my children's room.
New installation.
What's to the side of you, where the air conditioners are gonna be? What's the property next to you?
Directly behind me, there's no structure. It's a driveway, and then part of, the Camp Meeting Association owns like a garden area.
Okay,
So nobody would be directly behind it, which is why I want to put it behind the home.
yeah, nobody's gonna hear them then.
No one's gonna hear it, and it's the first house when you walk up to Trinity Park of the historic district. But to put it on the side, it would be the first thing people say.
And, you can't do it less than you can't do less than the 2 feet. It wouldn't, there's not enough room.
There's just no,
house actually does it anywhere around the house. It's gonna get triggered no matter where she puts them.
pretty much.
We're here for 3 feet.
I sneeze in a minute, sir.
You have to mount them on the roof of the house. Any other questions by the board? Nope. Any members of the public have any questions of this witness on the testimony given this evening? I hear none, see none. Nothing else you'd like to add, correct? Any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? I hear none and see none. De minimis request, guys, am I right?
Yes. Yes.
And,
Much needed for the family needs.
somehow I have lost Bernie. Someone frame a resolution, please?
Application 2247, Constance Schlett, 24 Simpson Ave, Block 58, Lot 1 in the R3 zone. I recommend the board grant to C variance to install 2 air conditioning units, contrary to sections 430-35, column 8.
Second ready?
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz.
He's in limbo right now, I lost him.
Okay, Jaskowitz.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Mazzarella.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Willens.
Yes.
Hurricane.
Yes. Results of variance granted. Enjoy your new cooling.
Thank you very much.
All right, Bernie's back. Bernie, sorry, we lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I got that. I still have a picture yet.
You voted yes.
You read my mind.
Okay, no other business, right, Nora, besides the...
Nope, we can move on to the next.
Okay, 1956 GTP acquisitions. Mr. Vogel? Nora, by any chance, did you print out that memo that Mr. Vogel sent?
I gave it to Pete. I spoke with him
All right.
and gave it to him.
I'll just get it on my screen. Go ahead, you may proceed.
Good evening. I want to be sure where we left off at the end of last meeting. I know that Mr. Bryce was cross-examining, and I had completed his cross-examination of our witness, and I believe I had completed cross-examination of Mr. Steck, who was the last witness. I did pay a courtesy call to Mr. Bryce to see if he had other witnesses. He's here. If he has no other witness, I do have one rebuttal witness who I'm prepared to present, but it's subject, of course, to whether or not Mr. Bryce has further testimony in his behalf.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jim Bryce appearing on behalf of Friends of Parsippany Green Space. I absolutely agree with everything that Mr. Vogel just said. We do not have any further witnesses at this time. I do understand that Mr. Vogel wants to introduce another witness, and certainly I have no objection to that. I would just simply reserve after examination opportunity to close.
Okay, thank you. I guess you can call your witness.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Radford. May I have, Mr. King, may I have a witness sworn?
Sir, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give before the board is the true self you got?
I do.
And for the record, could you state and spell your name?
Jeremy Ragsdale, Jeramy Ragsdale.
And the testimony, Mr. Vogel, is it factual, expert?
Mr. Ragsdale, would you identify your relationship to the applicant in this matter?
So that's just factual?
Pardon me?
It's factual, not
Factual, yeah.
factual, okay.
I'm a member of the entity making the application, and I
Let's
own a
speak it a
business.
little bit
Into
louder.
the mic.
Sorry, I'm a member of the entity making the application, and I own a business called Thrive Senior Living. We are an owner, operator, and developer of senior living communities up and down the East Coast.
Okay, would you describe to the board what the business of Thrive is and what your involvement is with respect to Thrive?
Well, I think I stole my own thunder. That's what I just said. We are an owner, an operator, and a developer of senior living communities, independent living, assisted living, and memory care. We've done about 40 projects in the last 15 years, 40 senior living communities in 14 states.
And you would be the operator of the proposed facility, which is the subject of this application, if it is approved?
That's correct.
Would you describe to the board what the age group of the people would be that would, and what restrictions, if any, you would have with respect to the age group of the people who would be residents at this facility?
Yes, we're open to an age restriction of 65 plus for this development, for this community. In the balance of our experience in our communities, the average age of move-in for across all of our residents is over 80 years old in all of these different categories of senior living, independent living included.
And would you describe in the operation of the facility, the interaction or the relationship between the independent living units and the assisted living units, both as contemplated here and as your experience has shown?
Certainly. We have a project in Bergen County. We were actually touring that building today, and the concept here is relatively similar from an operation standpoint in that there's an independent living component, there's an assisted living component, and a memory care component. As you know, the assisted living and memory care is a licensed use by the state. It's considered a healthcare use. Independent living allows for a resident to move in whose needs are for a safe environment, food service on site, the ability for us to provide concierge services and coordinate care for them. And when hands-on care becomes necessary, at a certain level, we are able to move them into one of our assisted living units. And if there's a cognitive need, we're able to move them into one of our memory care or dementia care units. So the idea here, and this is the way that we've worked across our entire portfolio of communities, is that the independent living and assisted living residents share common amenities. So everything from dining facilities through, we have a coffee shop that's open to the residents internally, a bistro, outdoor amenities, activities, fitness, all of that is shared. And the idea is to create a social environment where you can move in when your care needs are relatively low. And as your care needs progress, if you need to move into an assisted living unit, you're still dining with the same social circle. You're still able to maintain those social connections in that same environment.
So there was a point made by Mr. Steck in his testimony that this is not a CCRC, a continuing care retirement community. Would you describe, for the benefit of the board, the similarities or differences between a CCRC and what you are projecting for this site?
Certainly, yeah, the core difference in what
This is not factual,
CCRC,
this is just based on his operation of the site?
Yes.
yes, based on my experience, the definition of a CCRC within our industry can vary, but the CCRC is continuing care retirement community. And the key difference in what's traditionally referred to as a CCRC and what we do is that our product is a rental product. So there is no cash buy-in upfront for our product. You rent the product that you need while you need it. You rent the unit that you need for as long as you need it. And when your needs change, you can move to a different unit. CCRC model typically has a large cash buy-in. Those can range from 100,000 to $1 million plus, depending on the market, up front, and then a monthly fee on top of that. And when your needs change within a CCRC, you're able to move to a higher level of care when it's available. Our system is exactly the same. We charge a little bit higher monthly rent, but there is no cash outlay up front. So structurally and operationally, we operate the same as a CCRC.
I have no further questions of the witness. Submit them to the board or Mr. Bryce or whoever.
I have a question. So you said you've done 40 projects?
Yes, sir.
How many projects have you done that are like this in the sense of you put it in the middle of a community?
I would say more than half. Most of our projects are located in residential areas. It is not typically a good fit for a busy or bustling commercial area. And so more than half of our projects, I took a quick look at our list this morning and was kind of thinking through what are the adjacent uses, and most of them are very residential.
Near or just in the middle? If you could be a little bit more specific.
It varies wildly. We've been in the middle of mixed-use developments where we are right in the center of a development. We've been adjacent to commercial. We've been adjacent to institutional. It varies. I would say we've done a little bit of everything.
Now, the continuing care, so my question is, the proposed site is going to have initial entry folks coming in, like me, that I might want to just go there. Then as my needs get greater, I can have better care, and then as I don't know who I am, I can have full care, okay? But my question is, the third stage, where are those people going to come from initially?
So you're speaking of the dementia or memory care?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So there's a lot of, in our experience, to be clear, in our experience, there's a lot of people who enter our community straight from home. So as a cognitive need comes up, so whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's, as a cognitive need comes up, they can move in straight from home.
Got it.
More typically, though, especially after a few years of being open, almost 100% of those residents come from people who have lived in our community for a few years and their cognitive needs have changed while they live there. It's also often a spouse or a partner. If there's a situation where a couple is living with us, and often one's cognitive needs will change. And the beauty of a model like this is one spouse can continue to live in an independent living unit in that type of environment, and the other, whose needs have changed, can live in a different part of the community and they still be close. That's quite common.
A little follow-up on Mrs. Jakowitz's question. In your experience, what are the benefits to the residents to be in a community surrounded by residential versus non-residential?
It's the same reason why you've probably chosen to live in a home surrounded by other homes. This is a residence. This is a residential use. This is a home, and you'd prefer to be in a peaceful surrounding environment of other residences. So, there are times when we've located adjacent to restaurants or shopping, but we're usually sort of a buffer between that and a residential area as well. So I would say that for the same reason that any one of us would want to live in a residential community surrounded by other homes.
So can you talk me through, I guess, the socialization and whatever programs that you, and then the primary testifier in the beginning of this application, how do they socialize within the residents, with the residents within the zone? Like, so you said this is great, they're all residents, but residents interact with each other. So talk me through some of the projects in which these multi-residential unit occupants go out to these the neighborhoods in which these exist, and how do they interact and engage with the homeowners?
Sure, so I want to make sure I'm understanding your question. You're asking, so the residents at a community like this.
Correct, yeah.
That live inside it, how are they interacting with residents that surround it, that live
Right.
outside it, correct?
Back in 2021, there was testimony about how there were programs centered around infusing the wisdom and experiences of the seniors who live in these multi-residential units with high school programs, although no program was really cited, according to my notes back then. So I'm asking you, like, how do they integrate with the residents in the already established zone?
Sure. So I understand the question. So at each one of our communities, we have a social network director. That's a title. We were with our social network director up in Bergen County today, and it's the full-time role of that person to come up with and execute on programming for our residents. And so it goes two directions. One is we can host events inside of our community, whether that's one-off events or series of events, whether that's lectures, whether that's classes, whether that's fitness, that can be open to people who live nearby. So you can come participate in that with our residents. There's seasonal events, so we'll do Christmas gift wrapping, we'll do drives for different things. I'm trying to think through things that we do in other communities where the surrounding neighbors are welcome to come in, and it's advertised and it's open, and you can come in and interact with and meet our residents. We also have a lot of local school performances at a lot of our communities where local school, whether it's a choir or performing arts of some sort, can come in and perform in our community. That's relatively common, and that's not just common for us, that's common in senior living overall. There's no secret sauce that we have there. And then, in reverse, we have transportation, and a lot of the residents that will live here, at least some of the residents that will live here, will have their own transportation, and we can go proactively participate in events held outside the community. And just as a general statement, we've seen that our residents love participating in municipal and social events that are somewhat underattended otherwise. So whether that's a local school play or performing arts of some sort, and we can organize that transportation to those. We typically have. Does that help?
That helps. And out of these projects, how important is it to consider whether the area has or does not have a robust transit system?
The primary concern with that is going to be the ease of our team on the ground to recruit talent, to recruit team members to work there, and whether or not those team members in any given market have their own transportation and can drive or need transit. The lack of access to transit generally makes it a little bit more difficult, and sometimes we have to pay more for good talent so that they can afford a vehicle to come back and forth with.
And so you do realize this corridor lacks robust transit?
We understand that. And I would say that probably, I'll say the majority, I'm not going to make up a statistic, but the majority of the communities that we've built and operated over time are not adjacent to mass transit. It's nice when they are, but it's not a requirement for us.
And they'll be heavily reliant on either private transportation or single occupant or double occupant vehicles.
That's correct. I would point out, though, I think that from there's probably from a few different perspectives. The majority of the residents that I think will end up living here and receiving care with us from those caregivers are probably local. So again, I keep going back to this example, but our Bergen County community that we were at today, we were kind of asking around where our current residents have come from. Most of them are very, very close and local. So that those team members, that staff who will be providing this care, if they're living somewhere else, if they're living at home, then they're probably going to go to that home and provide that care. And so in the sense of overall traffic and trips, it's more efficient to provide that care in a congregate environment like this than it is in people's homes.
Thank you.
When you were describing the neighborhood before, you described it as a peaceful residential area, and that's why you're companies looking for, to place your home here. I think part of the concern of the neighbors is they're really, especially right along 202 there, you're really pushing the threshold of peaceful. And with the traffic, the football games, the fireworks, there's a lot that goes on there. I'm just curious, is this, are you aware of that level of noise, and do you think that that's going to impact the residents there?
I believe we are aware of it, and I think everything is relative. So if you're asking that question, by the way, I did not state that that's why we chose that site. I just think it's a.
You say it as a benefit and as a reason why you
That's
look
right.
there.
I think it's one of the
as opposed to
benefits.
A more commercial area.
That's right.
It was definitely a selling point in the way you were talking about it.
I think so, and I think it'll be a selling point for the residents that live there as well, but, versus placing it in the middle of an industrial park or on the side of a very noisy interstate or next to an airport or a shipping terminal. This is a much more bucolic and quiet environment than that. So everything is relative.
And in your opinion, would this facility change that?
I do not think so at all. I think this is a very quiet use. Yeah.
Do you have any concern about emergency vehicles getting to the facility, given the very high level of traffic at certain points during the day?
We face very similar issues at a lot of our other communities, and those same emergency vehicles have got to get to these residents in nearby communities the same way and on the same streets. So I don't know that that's a problem that should be the responsibility of the applicant here.
You mentioned you have roughly 40 facilities. About half of them are in residential areas like this. Are you aware of complaints, problems, conflicts between your facilities in these neighborhoods and the neighbors? And if so, what would those problems be? If you're not aware, would you, in your current position, be privy to that information?
I believe I would, especially if it's escalated past a friendly phone call to our community. But in 15 years of doing this, I don't think we've had any... No
friendly phone calls to your community?
That I can't speak to, but anything that's been escalated to my level, no.
Okay, and you operate out of Georgia?
We do.
If I remember correctly?
We do.
Is there a position, someone in the Georgia headquarters or whatever the term is, does someone come up and check on the facilities frequently? How do you oversee that?
Yeah, we're in our communities a lot. We have team members that are here quite a bit. So we have a team that handles operations. We have a team that handles sales, team that handles the care, the clinical aspect of what we do. And we're in the communities quite a bit.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any of the 40 facilities that you opened, have any had to close?
No, sir.
So to that end, how do you pivot during market declines? For instance, out of the breakdown of these 156 units, right? Let's say there's a decline in the demand for whatever independent, more like memory care units. What happens to you? What do you do with backfilling the empty units? How do you pivot?
Yeah, so we've had communities open and operational through the financial crisis of 8, 9, 10, and then most recently through the pandemic. We've obviously seen market conditions change a lot. We've also been in markets where new supply has come online, new competitors have come online, and we've had to deal with that. We're fortunate in that some of our cost structure and our expense structure as a business is flexible in that a lot of the hands-on care is on an hourly basis, and we can flex that up and down with the needs of the residents and the occupancy that we have there. So we've been fortunate not to...
I'm going to be a little bit more straightforward because my question's not being answered. And then that's not your fault. do you, in essence, recalibrate how you use those units? Or
No,
even
that's-
repurpose, like, in other words, one of the discussions, I think, in one of our previous meetings, is ensuring that the intended use of these units stay the intended use of these units, and they don't, they're not malleable, they don't change if market demand for a particular categorized unit changes, or tanks. For instance, converting some of these memory care units into basically independent care apartments.
We've never needed to do that, and we've never done that in our history. I would also say that, especially in New Jersey, with the license that we'll have on those units, those will be units licensed for care, and we're mandated to staff for a certain number of units and provide an amount of oversight for that. That would be very difficult, I think, to go back and change that. And I think if anything, with the aging population and the trends that we're seeing, the trend would probably go the other direction, where we would need more care units over time. And again, I can only speak from my own experience,
Yeah.
but that's not anything we've ever done.
And then you said 65 was minimum age, correct?
I said
Is that-
we are open to deed restricting and age restricting the community for residents that are 65 and older.
Okay, but in 2021 testimony, there was an indication that it was age 55 and over. Do I have that wrong? Right? I have that right, correct?
It was that
So which is it?
Witness is upping it another 10 years to 65.
Yeah, the
Okay. And that's
65 is something we're willing to do, and I want to make sure we're easing concerns that this is a dedicated and purpose-built community for seniors. We're not trying to slide one by and have an apartment complex here.
One more question for you. In your opinion, would your facility preserve the density, character, and aesthetics of this neighborhood?
I don't think so. I think it changes it quite a bit.
So, just a quick question, I guess. You stated that you'd rather not be in the commercial area, and I think in a prior meeting, we talked that there's a number of areas in our town that this would fit in without disturbing the current residents in an area. The Bergen County facility you were talking about, is that the one in Montvale?
That's correct.
All right, so that one, and I know you said you didn't, because I've been by it. You said you didn't really go near major highway, you prefer not to be major highways. The Parkway entrance is right there in the Montvale one, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a fairly
actually-
busy road across from the Whole Foods and,
That's not true at all. It's on Summit Avenue, and it's about a half a mile away from the turnpike. So it is not, if you would looked at it on a Google map and didn't visit yourself, we had a welcome center that was right across from the Wegmans. It's not a Whole Foods, it's a Wegmans. And
Okay.
that welcome center was a commercial use, it was a sales center while we built the property.
so that's not the facility?
That's not the facility.
Okay, then I
The
drove by
facility is about a mile from that.
Okay. So I don't think the turnpike's up there, is it? It would be the Parkway.
I'm sorry, the Parkway.
Okay,
It's
just
up terms.
That's all I had.
Anybody else on the left here? Good. Anybody else on the right? Nope. Oh, I'm sorry.
There was a discussion last year, I think, last year, that there was going to be van service at the site. And your discussion of how people would get around, leave the site, didn't mention that at all. There are going to be.
I believe I did mention that when we were talking about activity. So we do have vans, we do have transportation. At each one of our communities, we have at least 2 vehicles. One's usually a larger bus where we can take more residents, and one's usually a sedan or an SUV where we can take residents to doctor's appointments or smaller
I
groups.
have the question mark next to whether there was a commitment. So there is a commitment to have that type of transportation.
There is, yeah, absolutely.
Did you look at the plan at all, in terms of how it sits behind the church and how you get to it?
Yes, sir.
I mean, your main entrance is going through the church parking lot. Is that normal?
Are you asking if that's something that we have done before?
Yeah.
I can think of at least a few communities that we have that don't have direct frontage on the street and that are on somewhat of a flag lot where, not somewhat of a flag lot, on a flag lot, where we either have an easement or a flag piece of
You're not going
property
through
with
a parking lot.
access. Adjacent to a parking lot in a driveway form.
A little different. Yeah. Did it concern you at all?
No, sir. Main avenue retail style visibility or access is just not an important function for what we do. And again, the Montville, property that we were talking about, it's not on a main thoroughfare. A lot of our communities are not. I think 20 years ago, that was more important for a community like this where retail visibility was important. Most people don't find us that way anymore. They find us through an internet search or through a referral. So that's become less important.
So you don't see this being unique going through the church property?
It's not even unique in our portfolio. We have other communities that are accessed through a flag lot or an easement.
What happens if the church,
I don't think a flag lot is comparable to what this is, but you seem to think it is.
From an optic standpoint, after the community is open, it's a driveway without significant frontage on the main road. And I think it effectively is the same.
what happens if the church decides to relocate and they sell that property? Do you still have access to your?
Yes.
You'd have to get an easement, wouldn't you? You'd have to get an easement.
Well, you show easements there, but I don't know what your agreements are. I have no other questions. Oh, yes, I do. You were explaining to the board the difference. I'm sorry? Yes, you were explaining to the board the difference between your product and a CCRC. It's my understanding if you buy into a CCRC, you're guaranteed that you can stay there.
I'm really glad you asked that question. Yes. Part of the process with a CCRC is that if you buy in at an independent living level and your care needs change, that when a unit is available, you will have priority to move into an assisted living unit or a memory care unit. They don't kick a resident out of a full unit to allow you to move in. They just give you priority to move into that unit. We do the same thing. So if you move in with us and you're renting an independent living unit, you get priority on an assisted living unit when you need it. Again, very, very
Is that in
similar.
your lease? Does the renter have any way of enforcing that policy?
We have put that in our resident agreements before. We don't every time because it's not typically seen as a important function, but we can.
If the board approved it, would you?
We would be willing to do that, yes.
Anybody else from the board? Oh, thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'm sorry, I didn't read all my notes. Have you heard the discussion about the affordable unit requirements of the township?
Yes, sir, I have.
And the two licenses you have automatically require a 10% set aside. There is no set aside on the independent units.
I've already stated on the record that this facility will meet whatever the legal obligations are to provide affordable housing.
I missed it.
The regulations vary from municipality to municipality, depending upon what your unmet need is, depending upon what your status is.
The township's just a flat
Whatever-
20%.
Whatever the legal requirement is with respect to that, this facility will satisfy its obligation.
Okay. Now I'm done.
Now you're done, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for appearing tonight. I just have a few follow-up questions to your testimony. A lot of the the questions that I had were addressed by members of the board. You indicated that in your testimony that you were open and in your letter to the board amenable to imposing an age restriction of 65 years, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Are you going to do that by virtue of a deed restriction in perpetuity affecting the entirety of the property?
We will do it by whatever legal document is necessary to assure that we are operating consistent with that representation.
And there was some testimony that you had regarding various types of services that you provide for independent living. And I believe in your correspondence to the board, you do indicate that you coordinate light care and therapy with independent living.
That's correct. We can't provide the care with our own team members, but our team can coordinate with third parties, which is how that's typically done.
Now, last you were talking about priority and CCRCs. Now, just to be clear, if you do have an independent rental unit or a cottage, and you need to graduate to assisted living at your facility, you're not guaranteed entry into assisted living, correct?
You would be guaranteed first priority for whatever assisted living unit became available first.
Okay. And in a CCRC, if I have that acronym correct, they actually will provide on site that assisted living, even if you're not placed into a separate unit on the same campus, correct?
I want to be careful to draw the line between facts and my understanding. In most states and with most licenses, there's a difference between a licensed unit and an unlicensed unit. Care cannot be provided by that on-site staff in an unlicensed unit. So my understanding, and I don't operate any of those models, is that we would need to physically move into an assisted living unit in order to receive assisted living services.
And I'm just going to read you a few things and see if these appear to be accurate, at least to your understanding. A continuing care retirement community. That is for the provision of lodging and nursing, medical, or other related services at the time, at the same, or another location to an individual pursuant to an agreement effective for the life of the individual, or for a period greater than 1 year, including mutually terminable contracts, and in consideration of the payment of an entrance fee with or without other periodic charges. Agree with that?
Not necessarily. There's elements of that I think don't exist in all communities that call themselves CCRCs.
Would you agree that your type of community would be a facility that's also licensed, that combines apartment-style living, independent living residences, and assisted living residence in a home-like environment with a continuum of care services?
With the addition of memory care services, that's probably not a complete description, but I didn't hear anything inaccurate in that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Now, I know a number of the residents are, Mr. Bryce, right?
Yes.
Yeah. A number of the residents are represented by Mr. Bryce. If you are not represented by Mr. Bryce and you would like to ask a question of the witness on the testimony given this evening, is there anyone who wants to ask a question of Mr. Bryce? Come on forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say the wrong thing? I'm sorry. Come on, you can use the microphone.
Ma'am, just for the record, can you state your name
Yes, I'm Pam McDonald.
and address, please?
Why don't you lower
This
that?
gentleman, this kind gentleman, oh, I'm sorry.
Why don't you try to, can you lower that?
That's okay, not too loud. I don't want to break any sound barriers here.
And your address,
Can you hear me?
yes, your address too.
Oh, 11 Fieldcrest,
Thank you.
Parsippany. You know, this gentleman made a very nice statement saying that this facility is going to apply to the people in Parsippany.
Excuse me, please don't testify.
Okay,
You have
all
a
right.
question?
I just
and
like to
I'm
have a
telling
question. I would like to
Please
see.
don't get me upset tonight, okay?
I won't get you upset.
Come up here and ask a question. No
Okay.
testimony. I'll give you ample time
Okay.
to ask, to answer,
That's
to
no
say whatever
problem.
you'd like to say, but this is.
What I would like to know is,
questions.
I would like a copy of your marketing report. I have requested this marketing report twice and have never received it. So I would like to see the marketing report. My second question is, age restriction, 65 and over? Does that age restriction apply to the 20% of low-income housing?
So the age restriction would apply to everyone, regardless of
Including low-income housing required by the state?
any
Yes or no?
affordable requirements would also fall under the, what I assume will be a deed restriction for the age requirement, yes. I think the short answer to your question
So
is
in other
yes.
words, low-income housing, everybody's got to be over 65? Well, that's not going to happen. Also, facilities, when you move from one area to another, and you said that if there is availability, one person has dementia, whatever, if it's available, if it's not available, where do they go? A state facility?
They're going to have to move somewhere where there is availability.
So in other words, all the money that we pay to stay where you are, where does that money go? In other words, if you're moving a patient to a state facility and they have money invested that they're drawing on.
There's no investment here. This is a monthly
No,
rental.
but where's, for example,
Yes, ma'am.
somebody comes in, they have $400,000,
Okay.
okay? When that money runs out, where do they go?
They'll have to move somewhere else.
All right, they'll have to move somewhere else.
Yes, ma'am.
That's my question. And therefore, if the money, let's say they have $100,000 left, but they have to move, but you don't have availability, what happens to that $100,000?
It's their money. They can pay for care wherever they can find it.
Wherever they can find it.
That's right.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't think that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Sir, if you could state your name for the record
Nicholas Homyak.
and your residence, sir?
Yes, sir, Lake Hiawatha, 2609. You say that the rents varied, and if I remember from a few sessions ago, it was between 5,000 and 9,000 a month or a week?
No, sir, not a week, but on a monthly basis, yes, sir.
All right, so 5,000, and not, so these are pretty high-bred people, so do you feel confident that you're gonna be able to fill these spaces with these, very well-to-do old people that are not gonna live forever?
Yes, sir. We've done this a number of times with very, very similar rent. And I'll also point out that that's not just simply rent, that there's a food service component to that, there's care component to that, there's a lot included in that number that's not rent.
All right, I would hope so. One of the ways you said they were gonna get around when they're on the compound was said by golf carts. Will these golf carts be electric, or will they be gas burners?
I don't know that we've made a determination there. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know that I've seen a gas golf cart in a while, but if we do have golf carts on the site, I would imagine they would be electric.
All right. And you said you're going to choose the area because it's quiet. Now, the road noise was brought up, and it's also a fact that the trees will be gone. Are you aware that trees absorb noise, that when trees are present or not present, that noise is either diminished or increased depending on the amount or the density of trees?
Yes, sir, we are.
And you don't think that will affect the, what you call quiet? I think you called that at one time the fringe of town. I don't know how you ever, came up with that one. Not you particularly,
Right.
but it was called the fringe of town. And lastly, this area is not zoned for affordable housing, right? This is part of your rezone to to get into the
No, sir, the
development?
discussion on affordable requirements, and I'll let council speak to this, but in any development like this, there's usually state and municipal requirements that a certain percentage of the units have rent set at a level that qualifies as an affordable unit. So that's regardless of the project type or age restrictions. That's a little bit different than buildings purpose-built and specific affordable housing.
All right, so if you get your foot in to this development using the ploy of affordable housing, and this senior home fails, wouldn't the developer come back for another rezone that make the whole compound of affordable housing or residential?
No.
You can't get any more old people. They ran out of money. What are you gonna do? In this economy?
If you look at what's happening in the country, in the state of New Jersey, in this county, in this town, you will find that these kinds of facilities are both viable and successful.
Because you have an old generation with old money, and when they expire, that's it.
There's the next generation, everybody's getting older. Nobody's
Yeah,
getting
and
younger.
poor, and
You and I
poor,
are both getting older. We're
And-
not getting any younger.
and poor. All right, I'll leave it at that.
Any other members of the public have any questions? Please come forward, you gotta identify yourself.
Sir, how are you? Could you please state your name and address?
Cirrus Pars, 1 Kenneth Lane. I am going to be right around the corner from this proposed facility.
I apologize. What is your name?
Sorry, Cirrus Pars, P-A-R-S.
First name?
Cirrus, C-Y-R-U-S, oh, sorry. 1 Kenneth Lane.
Where's the voice?
I have one very simple question. I drive my children to school. This is part of the question, please. I drive my children to school every day, right on Littleton Road. Have you, 385, driven at 7:30 in the morning on that road recently?
In the last 18 months, yes, this process has dragged out quite a bit.
I understand. I was there for the first one at St. Christopher's. That's my only question. Thank you, everybody. You've driven there, and you want to propose to put this facility right there. When you have all of Parsippany,
Question,
You don't wanna hear about all Parsippany?
aren't there a lot of open areas in Parsippany, commercial areas, that already have a lot of traffic? You have to put it where my children are
Question.
walking to school? We need more traffic? I ask a question, do me a favor, tomorrow, I'm sure you'll be here tomorrow, drive at 7:30 in the morning down that road.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough.
Thank you so much. I
Cut
pay
you off,
taxes.
I'm sorry.
I pay taxes.
You can't, look, so do I. So do I.
Thank you.
And I'm up here as a volunteer. And I ask you to listen to, I ask you to listen to me, okay? If you don't have any more questions, let's see if there's anybody else that has a question. Thank you. Any other member of the public? Are you applauding me? Was that for me? Thank you, I appreciate it.
I'm gonna go with no.
Let's call the applause, come on. This is-
Mr. Chair, I have an additional question, if you would indulge me. I have an
Well, let her
additional-
come up and then we'll go back to the board, okay? Let's do the members of the public first.
Mayor, for the record, could you please state your name and address?
Yeah, Kelsey Zagarelli, 10 Exeter. So I want to go back to the noise. I can imagine a man or woman with dementia would want to hear a football game, marching band, or anything at 8 o'clock at night, fireworks. Can you guarantee that that life will not change? The high school will not, that environment won't change?
I can't guarantee anything, no.
So you're saying, okay. So you're saying down the road, you may try to alter, we just got, I don't know when we got the lights, we just got Friday Night Football. We go to fireworks since I was born. So you're saying that may change if you guys see fit for your patient?
I misunderstood the question.
Mhm.
Are you asking if we would try to change the environment at the school?
Correct. I'm just
I think these
concerned.
things are governed by the town and the Board of Education. I don't think he has any control over what the Board of Education does at the high school, and I don't think he has any control over what the town does.
So what I'm asking is, will his organization, I guess the right word, go to the board, go to the town and request things?
We are only requesting permissions that involve this specific property and what we want to do on it. We are not asking for any changes to any surrounding
So
property.
you have no intention of asking any of those
No, we
types of
don't.
questions?
So down the road in 5 years, when patients are complaining because there's fireworks on 4th of July, or a marching band is celebrating a playoff game at 9 o'clock, you're not going to say our patients can't handle the noise. Please, let's do something about it. Let's move the games up, or let's cancel Friday Night Football, or whatever it may be.
Well, can I interrupt a second? Maybe a
Yep.
better question would be, are you going to construct those buildings so you'll have noise attenuation as it faces the football field?
Yes, we are, and it's to our benefit to do that. And so for us, and we've done this we've built buildings next to train tracks, we've built buildings in other environments, flight paths, other places where we need to attenuate noise and light. And we've done that time and time again. I imagine we'll do the same here.
So would you be agreeable as a condition that there will be noise attenuation on the buildings that face the high school? Which is basically the dementia.
In general, yes. I don't want to commit to some specific decibel reduction, or we've got our
We can get there.
development partner, but yes, that's something that, and to be honest, I think we would want to do that for our own residents' sake, regardless.
Your own marketing, of course.
You were clapping for Mr. Chadwick right there. I mean, how was that one? Who's next? Anybody else? Come on up.
Ma'am, for the record, please state your name and address.
Yeah. Brittany Palazzati, 481 Lynchburg Drive.
Spell your last name?
Polizzotti. Good? Okay. Earlier you said that you were open to changing the age limits. Is that a commitment and confirmed it is 65 and up?
Yes, we've made that commitment and confirmed it here.
Okay, and that was because of the discussions that were held here during our sessions, or a different driver?
No, that's because of this. We just want to assure everyone here in the board that this is a dedicated community for older adults.
And is there any risk to that age limit between 55 and 65 being in a community? Which is what made you make that decision?
I'm not sure I understand your question there. Is there risk?
So how'd you land on 65?
We're simply increasing it because of a concern that, in agreeing to an age restriction in the first place, to alleviate a concern that this is a community not targeted at seniors. And we're also reaffirming the fact that this is an inherently beneficial use, which is a pretty tightly controlled legal term, and that involves us providing housing and services for seniors, which we want to clearly define as being 65 and older.
My next question is, you said that you had never closed down one of your properties. I recall in one of our prior sessions that Thrive has in fact lost one license for a facility. Is that correct?
We've not lost a license, no. I don't know where that information came from.
Okay. Okay. Have there ever been any applications that were denied?
Applications for a senior living license that were denied?
Applications to set up a senior living property,
To rezone a piece of property to,
not just rezoning, just to set up your property in a certain,
In New Jersey?
yeah, no. Short answer, no.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the public? Please come forward.
Sir, state your name and
Hello,
address.
everyone. I'm Nikunj Patel, 20 Alley Road, Morris Plains, New Jersey. I think I have a couple of questions on your knowledge about density of this neighborhood and the characteristic that you're planning to develop in the neighborhood. Are you aware of average lot size, or property size of the houses around this property? If so, what is
I
it?
couldn't quote the number now, no.
I think this is very important for you to know that,
Don't give your opinion.
no, I'm not going, I'm revealing the facts.
Now's not the time for facts.
Okay.
Chairman, do you need to just state that people are gonna have a chance to?
I think I said that.
I think maybe they need to hear it again.
Anyone who wants to talk, matter of fact, I'm putting together a list right now of numbers. If you want to speak after the questioning is done, you come up, you sign your name here, okay? Then we're going to call you by number. And I'm going to give everybody 3 minutes to testify. And if you're not through after 3 minutes, you go to the end of the line, and you can come back at the end of the line for another 3 minutes. So I will give everybody as much time as they like, but only in 3-minute intervals, okay? So hold your testimony until that time happens. Just ask questions.
Yeah, so the question
Please.
is, what is your proposed density per acre?
Less than 17 units per acre.
17 units per acre. I want you to note that 17 units per acre is the proposed plan. Yeah? That's it, I'm done with my question. Thank you.
Per acre. Per acre.
Oh,
17
units.
Yeah, the 156 divided by.
State your name slowly so I can write it down, please, and
Sir.
address.
Nathaniel Frampton at 9 Rita Drive, Morris Plains.
Repeat
Question.
your name, please.
Nathaniel Frampton at 9 Rita Drive. Was there a traffic impact study done of that facility coming in there?
Yes,
Okay, and that's been presented?
it's been marked in evidence.
Okay, great.
You know, let me clarify one other thing, okay? There's been a number of hearings on this application. There's been a number of witnesses. When I asked if anybody had any questions of this witness on the testimony that he gave in the last hour, that's when you asked the questions of him, not on the traffic, because traffic had been dealt with a long time ago, okay? So whatever testimony he did this evening, that's what you asked him questions on, okay? Go ahead.
Apologies. And is there a wall around the facility to keep?
Not part of the testimony from this evening.
Any other members of the public have any questions? Come on forward again. 3 strikes, you're out, so.
All right, I'll be good, I promise. Have you looked at other places in Parsippany that have the balance? Yes, there may be commercial now, but still close to residential? Because I think of,
I don't think that's an appropriate question.
that isn't?
Nope.
Okay,
He's asking for a variance for this particular property. We're not talking about any other property.
I was bringing it back more to the residential that we've been speaking about and Part Hills being right there. That's why I brought it up.
It's not a applicable question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, come on up.
My name is Frank Medea, M-A-D-I-A. I live at 6 East Brooklawn Drive in Parsippany. I've lived in this area within 3/4 of a mile for the last 47 years. I have a question of the gentleman here. We've heard extensively about the benefits that this assisted living facility would have to your company and yourself. What are the benefits to the actual residents? I haven't heard you say much about that. How do we benefit from this?
I think I spoke quite a bit about that tonight. The programming, the activities that we offer there, can I clarify that further for you?
Yeah, we see this as a major disruption to the community that we live in. The community does belong to the people in Parsippany.
Hey, no testifying.
Okay. So I don't think you've done a real credible case at convincing... Excuse me?
Got to end in a question mark.
Okay. Again, I go back to my original
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
How do we benefit from
Let me
this?
answer it more directly. When you or someone who you know or someone who lives in the community gets to a point in life where your needs change and an environment like this is appropriate for you or someone that you know or love, you now have a place within your own community where that's available.
That was my question.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Any other
folks.
members of the public? Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay.
We can do, take a break a little.
Yeah, let's take a 2-minute.
I have one more question before we get to the break, please. Back to your developments, the other projects that you have. Talk about the dynamics of the restaurant component of this. Is it, previous testimony pointed to the fact that it was only available for the residents, right? And maybe their families when they go and visit them. Is it a matter of them showing showing their residential cards to get in? How do you safeguard not having the public coming in and out to use the restaurant
That's a good
facility?
question. So, in a community like this, our team members know our residents, not only first name, last name, and face, but they know a lot about them. It's a small community. Everybody knows everybody. You don't have to show an ID to get into dinner, but we know exactly who you are.
Okay.
And usually we know your family too.
All right.
And so if your adult son or daughter want to come have dinner with you, or your grandkids want to have dinner with you, we're going to know them as well.
So
There's no
okay.
ID required to sit down at dinner.
Understood. So Nana's 90 years old. Do you have like a bigger ballroom that you allow residents to use, rent, lease for any larger parties, or are residents advised to patronize maybe another locale, a restaurant or a ballroom or something?
We do it all the time. Birthday parties,
So you
bar
do
mitzvahs,
host
whatever.
large-
We
so-
do. We host four.
So hosting like 50 people for a party, 90
That
people
would be
for a
really
party?
rare to have anything that large.
Well, I'm just
no.
asking you. I
We-
mean,
We don't have space that large.
yeah, I understand that, but residents reach milestones, right? They turn 90, they turn 80, they turn 100.
If you want to have 100 folks over, you probably better
I'm
find a
asking you
different place.
how your other projects operate under those conditions.
We don't operate event centers, so
Okay.
you're just going to have
All
to
right.
find another place. But we do have like a small private dining room for 12, 15 people.
All right, so
And
15 to 20 would be the capacity of anything that you would host to celebrate a milestone of one of your residents, if their families chose to do so.
I don't know of a space that we would build that would allow anything much larger.
Well, you have 40 other projects. What do you do? I mean, somebody's turned 80 or 100. How do you accommodate?
Honestly, I have no
How do they
idea
operate?
what the maximum number of people we've had at a milestone birthday party. I just don't know.
Okay. All right, thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Vogel, do you want to sum now, or do you want to wait until we've heard the objectors and then?
Well, I would suspect that when we're finished with the witness, you will have the public have their opportunity, then Mr. Bryce and I will have
That's fine.
our opportunity to give our statements. and
Okay.
then afterwards we'll complete.
Raise your hand, see what people want to talk.
Show of hands of how many people want to testify. Okay, if you want to testify, come up and get a number. Write your name on this piece of paper. We're going to take a 5-minute, so I only have 9 names, I'm going to give you 5 minutes each to start off with, okay? 5 minutes each to start off with. If you don't use it, you don't use it.
That's
What?
generous.
Yeah.
And then you go to the end of the line. Okay.
With this process, you're going to be sworn in, so I have to swear you in because you're going to be under oath, so the factual testimony that you're going to be providing to the board is supposed to be truthful. It's not something you make up, okay?
All right, let's start off with Nicholas Napolitano, is that correct?
You need that. Nick, Mr. Napolitano, you raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board is true self you got?
Yes.
And for the record, we have your name, your address.
17 Rita Drive.
Thank you.
All right, first I'd like to say thank you to the zoning board members who've essentially been listening to this case since January 15th of 2020. That's the last time we were in this room for a meeting. So in reality, this project has been going on for now 3 years. About 10 years ago, I purchased my home on Rita Drive in an R1 zone, knowing the property behind my house was also an R1 zone. So I assumed there would never be any zoning changes or use variances granted since it was declared an R1 zone. I'm sure there are many other people who do the same thing when they buy homes. Originally, the plan for this home, for this property was to knock down the home at the end of Rita Drive and build the roadway on the same side of the street as children walk back and forth to high school. Then there was one and only one meeting with the small community that surrounds the church conducted by developers back in October 19. When we arrived there were about 6 chairs placed in a circle. By the time the meeting started, there were nearly 60. I don't think developers had any idea that they would be affecting so many members of our community. While we are sure what they're doing is an honorable thing, we do not believe it's in the right location in our town. On the contrary to what was said, there was never any another meeting, any indication of any plans of any future meeting with developers. There's a small neighborhood that basically leads to a high school, and with potential approval, you're now going to put something behind the church, which is totally landlocked by buildings and roads through parking lots, and having three-story buildings behind single-family homes. It just doesn't make sense. 202 has its fair share of traffic, as everyone in this area knows. Adding this development increases the traffic flow compared to an R1 zone 5 times over, which was given testimony by the developer's traffic expert. They are also now rerouting the entrance and exit at the church. That means students now go to CCD. On Sundays, they'll now have to cross that parking lot, unlike they've ever done before. Can you imagine that first weekend when the traffic has changed around that church parking lot, all those cars trying to go in and out? It'll be a total mess. Students also walk along Road 202 now. In the future, they'll have to cross 2 24-hour entrances and exits for this facility. I'm assuming now there's going to be 2 more crossing guards. Part of their plan calls for a stormwater pond or stormwater management pond behind the homes on Rita Drive. The engineer said that they will be maintained by the developer. To me, they're just mosquito breeding grounds because all the other stormwater ponds in Parsippany have water in them all the time. The surrounding property where the stormwater pond is set to be developed already floods with all the greenery that exists today. What happens when all this is cleared away and a development of this extent is built? I'm sure I know. Plenty more bases being flooded. I'm asking the board to consider all the negative criteria that was presented in our case. With this project, there are traffic issues, negative environmental impacts, flooded backyards, lack of water needed for the project, safety of children walking to and from school, light pollution, sound pollution to the neighbors from trucks, cars, emergency vehicles, and a change to the quality of life and community character already put. Is this complex really needed? How beneficial is it if you do a quick Google search of nursing homes and find plenty in the nearby area, including Country Home on 53, Sunrise across Route 10, and another Sunrise across Route 46? The Oaks at Denville, the Arbor House, and 2 Care One facilities. There's also 255 55 and older units going up in the old GlaxoSmithKline property, which already has roads, a traffic light, and plenty of infrastructure. Zoning board members are essential to protecting the zoning laws of the community. They also have the duty to protect the quality of life in neighborhoods. This project clearly affects the quality of life in our neighborhood. I want to say thank you again for all the board members and professionals on this case for over 3 years now. Thank you.
Hey, guys, no more applause, okay? Applause is over. I want to get out of here before the sunrise, okay? Applause is not necessary. I'm sorry if I'm being rough, but I got to move this meeting along. Is there any questions of this, on the testimony given from the board? No. Mr. Vogel, you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next person.
Thank you.
June Mattia? June?
Mattia.
Mattia, okay.
And just your address, please.
Yes, except I can't. Okay. My name is June Medea. I currently live at 6 East Brooklawn Drive.
Could you raise your right hand? You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board is true, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am, you're sworn.
Again, I currently live at 6 East Brooklawn Drive. Formerly, I lived at 11 Windsor Road, and before that, 39 Park Road. The reason why I'm telling you these locations is because this area of town has always been sought after and desired. Probably one of the most desired areas in the entire town. You had an expert witness about 2 or 3 Zoom meetings ago that brought up to the effect of home values being considered, and then he didn't expound on that, he just dropped the ball. Well, I'm picking the ball up tonight. In addition to being a resident of this neighborhood for 48 years, I am also a full-time broker with Century 21, which is up the street from St. Christopher's, for 34 years. I have sold approximately 39 homes in this local area. If anyone in this room thinks that house values will not be diminished by this project, you are sadly mistaken.
Excuse me 1 second. I just want to clarify something. You are not speaking as an expert witness. You're speaking on your own knowledge okay?
It's-
We're not representing,
I'm-
because you have not been sworn in, I mean, you have not been qualified as an expert witness. So what you're telling us is based on your personal experience.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I have expertise in home sales and resale values. If this project is allowed to proceed, the houses immediately surrounding that project will diminish in value. That will trickle down to the neighborhoods. There has to be better locations in this town to afford this type of project without diminishing house values. I'm sure most of the people in this room are concerned about their values, and they should be. I doubt the proponents of this complex really cares about our house values. Thank you.
Wait, don't go away, don't go away, come back, please, please. Any member of the board have any questions of this witness? Mr. Vogel, do you have any questions of this witness?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Brittany
Palazzati.
Palazzati, jeez, and I'm Italian, I can't even pronounce that, Jesus.
Ma'am, your residence, please, again.
481 Lakeshore Drive.
481.
Lakeshore Drive.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give before the board is true self you got?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. You're sworn.
For reference, I do live right across from Lake Parsippany right now, but I was born and raised at 14 Henyon Drive, which is directly bordering where we are planning and discussing to knock down the woods and build the senior living development. So this hits home literally and figuratively for me. I am 29, recently married, and I am thinking about having a family and kids. And I have lived outside of Parsippany for 4 years. I was in Hoboken, and now I am back in Parsippany because this is where my family is. This is where my friends are. My parents were raised and went in through the school districts of Parsippany, so I have a lot of roots here. I am very concerned that this development will no longer allow me to want to be in Parsippany. And for those reasons, I'll let you know. I know we've spoken a lot about the business and what they're building, but I just want to give a little bit more perspective into how impactful it is for myself and for my potential family if I were to live in the area. I had walked to and from high school, middle school from my house. My kids would not be able to do that if this development comes up. I had science classes that literally took us into the woods in the backyard, and you would learn, I don't know if anybody here was Parsippany Hills, Mrs. McCleskey, she would take you through, and you would have classes that would be in nature. That would be gone, that would be concrete, and that would be roads, literal roads that you cannot walk through. And most importantly to me is that entire nature development and that peacefulness that I have sought after for looking for future homes. I kept coming back to Parsippany because of the community, because of the people, because of the family, and because of the peacefulness and the quiet. And I will not be able to have that if this does go up. So I know I spoke a lot about myself there. I know that all of you have spent so many hours talking about this. I've been on all those Zoom meetings. I'm sure we all think they're painful. And I appreciate your time because I know you're volunteering your time here. But I'm just asking you to think about not only your current residents, but how this might impact future residents. And they said home value, but also the future families that might make different decisions because of this. So, yes.
Don't go away. Any members of the board have any questions of this witness? Mr. Vogel?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Robert Asaro. Yeah. That's what they want to do.
Sir, could you provide your address, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Robert Asaro, 31 Fieldcrest Road, Parsippany, New Jersey.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm testimony you're about to give before the board is yourself you got?
I do.
All right, thank you, sir. You're sworn.
First of all, I would also like to thank the member of the boards for the hard work that you do on behalf of the township. I think it's very honorable for you giving the time that you give. I also volunteered, I've been here 38 years, 39 years actually. I also volunteered to the town and gave my time to make this a better place to live. Unfortunately, I understand that the development that they want to make is a, honorable thing to do, but I don't think it's for the town and the section that they want to put it in. At the very beginning, I asked a question about cooking meals for that many people. The odors that's going to emanate into the atmosphere alone by itself. And I never heard that. They said they would answer that question later on when the experts came. I never heard the answer to that. The other thing that we talked about at one point was a retention pond. One of the board members came up with a great question. What about mosquitoes? Now, that guy was pretty smart because he knew everything about retention ponds, but he didn't know nothing about mosquitoes. And I think that was just a convenient lapse of memory on his behalf. Mosquitoes, to help you out if you don't know, the larva can hatch anywhere from 2 days to several months. And also, retention ponds, even if they're correctly engineered, can create havoc. It can create flooding, it can create soil erosion, and other unwanted wildlife. I heard Mr. Vogel say in the very beginning of that meeting that these people will do whatever needs to be done until we started talking about burying those pipes and the cost of burying those pipes. Then I heard a slight little comment say, well, we're going to only do what the law requires us to do. Now, he started backpedaling in the meeting at that time. If he's backpedaling in the meeting after in the beginning of the meeting saying that, what's going to happen once they get in there and start developing this development? The other thing we mentioned was the traffic, and I know we're all aware that was during COVID. Those offices were closed down on 202. They're still not completely open. And I heard a gentleman ask about 7:30 in the morning to take a ride. I go to work that time too. I don't drive anymore because of loss of eyesight. My wife drives me. And those cars are lined up from Fieldcrest Road, beyond in both directions, all the way out to 80. Which brings another point. The increase of that traffic, has anybody ever tried to get on from 202 to 80? So that increased traffic is going to do nothing but back up that ramp that was poorly engineered and cause somebody's going to end up dying in that spot one of these days. And if we're speaking about traffic, my concern is somebody 65 years old sitting in, I guess they're saying a restaurant or something where they're going to be serving martinis and stuff. I believe that came out in another meeting. And we got 3 schools in that area. I'd be afraid somebody 65 to 80 driving their car without a drink. But these people are going to be drinking in that facility and having a good time and maybe go out and get a pack of cigarettes or something else and not really think, oh, I had a drink, and should I go out? These are our kids that we got to protect in this neighborhood. These are our children, our grandchildren. And I think that the complex is an honorable complex, but I don't think it belongs behind St. Christopher's Church. We went on to say too, the gentleman with the retention pond that was their witness. He lived up by the Delaware River, but for some reason he didn't think there'd be no problem in Parsippany if that pond was there. Of course he wouldn't be, not for him, but for us it would be. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Massaro, I take issue with a 65-year-old person driving. I'm 75 and I'm still driving. If you're taking my license away from me, I'm going to be very upset. Okay?
I stopped driving at the daytime about 4 years ago because of poor eyesight, and I was smart enough not to do it anymore. And now I can't even drive during the day for the last 2 years.
Okay.
So I'm sure that everybody that age is going to have problems like I have, but I'm smart enough not to get behind the wheel. We don't know if these people are moving in arguably.
Any questions by the board? Mr. Vogel, you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next witness. Pat, M-A-C. Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, could you state your name and address?
Hi, my name is Pat Isaac, and...
She turned the mic off. I think Bob turned the mic off. He didn't want anybody else to speak.
Is it orange or red?
Red.
Green. Okay, press it again, and it should turn green.
Yep. And your address, ma'am?
It's 16 Kenyon Drive.
Could you raise your right hand? You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board, true self you got?
I do, Peter.
Thank you, ma'am. You're
Thank
sworn.
So I also have been participating in these meetings from the very beginning. And, you know, I heard a lot about the Sika case. So I was looking into the information about that case. And I was surprised to find out that it's so different from the zoning that's being requested here. And that case was particularly about a facility that wasn't in New Jersey at the time. Other people have talked about the number of senior communities in the area currently, and also the information that I looked at is that, you know, when we're evaluating a zoning change, if there's something that's substantially detrimental, that it's important to consider that. And as you've heard over time and from a number of people tonight, this zoning request is substantially detrimental to the character of the neighborhood, putting a number of facilities in a space that's so tight, the traffic, the environment, and I think that there's an opportunity to, you know, really consider the significant impact on us and the fact that there are other opportunities in the area that perform this service and other options for the applicant. I also did want to get up here and say how much I have appreciated every one of you participating over this time, asking your questions late into the night, and I want to say thank you and appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any questions for the board? Mr. Vogel, you have any questions? Mr. Vogel?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nick Homiak?
Sir, can you raise your right hand? You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board, true self you got?
Yes, sir.
For the record, can you state and spell your name?
Nicholas Homyak, Homyak.
And your residence?
26 Oneida Avenue, Lake Hiawatha.
Thank you. I think you're sworn.
To protect and preserve the water supply serving the Parsippany-Troy Hills community. In the past, we have not done a good job in protecting our groundwater resources, and this has been documented by various sources. Parsippany has the highest water deficit in the region of between 1 and 7.11 million gallons a day. This property, 21.9 acres, consists of 13.2 of those acres being considered and recognized as prime groundwater recharge. That's 60.2% of the property. There's also wellhead protection area, tiers 1, 2, and 3, which comprise 12.07 acres. which is 55.09% of the property. This property will literally become impervious surface, and the trees, once the trees are gone, the conditions in emerging properties will only get worse. Every day, a 40-foot tree, I don't know if any trees on the property are 40 foot, but there are beech trees there which are now endangered because of various climate change components. But a tree every day does more for the world than most people do. Every day, a 40-foot tree takes in 50 gallons of dissolved nutrients from the soil, raises its mixture to its utmost leaves, converts 10 pounds of carbohydrates, and releases about 60 cubic feet of pure oxygen into the air. Soil loss, 1% of organic matter in the top inches of soil holds approximately, get this, 27,000 gallons of water per acre. Removal of a minimal amount of organic matter can have significant water flow implications, especially in a flood-prone area. And lawns are another form of impervious surface, so the trees will be replaced by a lawn, which is another form of impervious surface. And the engineering, no matter what man does, he cannot replace the efficiency of ecological services that nature is already providing. I have here a copy of the Ecological Resource Inventory and Impact Statement done by a gentleman who never testified before this board, Mr. Kook, if I'm saying the name right. He's been cited in a few other cases as being inaccurate or false in his findings, and I would say that his report for Block 166, lots 84 and 86, are also leading us away from what does exist on the property. And I'll just give you a couple of examples here. No ecological amenities or functions are determined to be associated with this designated area as a result of the manipulated and developed characteristics. I believe most of the developed characteristics are on lot 84. But there's nothing in this report concerning soil composition, tree inventory, age, species, or groundwater recharge, or the wellhead protection area. So I would say that Mr. Kook's report, as other reports he has done, is flawed. And he did not testify in behalf of his own environmental impact report. And, oh, wait a minute, I shouldn't have closed it.
It's 5 minutes, Nick.
1 minute?
No.
No.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, here's a beautiful thing showing all the trees. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Tim Baxter, is that Baxter?
Okay, good evening. My name is Tim Baxter.
You need to be sworn in, sir. Raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board is true, so help you God. And for the record, you're Tim Baxter and your residence is?
14 Henyon Drive.
Thank you, sir. You're sworn.
Thank you. I just want to say that, first of all, thank the zoning board for your time and commitment. I'm on 3 or 4 nonprofit boards, so I know the work you're doing. It's significant, and isn't always appreciated. But 55 years ago, my family moved from Brooklyn, New York to Lake Parr, or we called it the country. I attended and graduated from St. Christopher's in Parr Hills. My wife graduated from Parr Hills too, and between us, our brothers, sisters, spouses, and children, a clan of about 50, virtually all grew up in this town attended the Hills, some St. Christopher's, most got married there, had baptisms, and yes, funerals there. The roots are deep, and it's been our intention to turn our home of 20 years to our children so they can continue on and enjoy what we enjoy. But frankly, that plan now has some real doubts because of what I believe is an unthinkable commercial development being considered in the heart of a residential and wooded community. You've heard from many tonight, you're using up my time. You've heard from many tonight, passionate and concerned about this project, safety of our children, traffic, community, quality of life, property values. And I suspect you've heard from Thrive about the growing need for this and how this is great for our community, or how it's great for our students, or how it will be a loophole of beneficial use. I don't buy it one bit, and neither should you. I spent over 35 years working for large, complex global tech companies, most recently as a CEO of a $30 billion business. In all of those businesses, we had a strategic plan that guided us, that was our North Star, that helped us make the tough decisions. We have that here in the township, and it's called the master plan. And I liken that to the master plan here. And yes, it allows you to wrestle through the tough decisions around development versus protecting the community, pressure points of tax revenue, infrastructure, service, safety, community. And the town just updated this plan 2 years ago, just as this project was beginning. I read that plan, all 140 pages of it, and it's pretty darn good. But it also says the master plan is to guide the use of lands within the municipality in a manner which protects public health and safety and promotes the general welfare. As those who have read this, there are 13 goals in that master plan. And what amazes me is that this commercial project in a residential zoned area clearly contradicts 7, if not 8, of those 13 goals. And believe it or not, the other 5 or 6 have nothing to do with this project. So every goal that it referenced that has to do with this project, this flies in the face of the goals that are in that master plan. I can go through those. There's a few I think that are really relevant. The first one, preserve and protect the character, density, and aesthetics of the township and the neighbors by restricting incompatible land uses. That seems pretty clear in this particular case. 3 years ago, it also goes on and says that it recognized the most important attribute is its residential neighborhoods. And it goes on to say ensuring the resident has the ability to enhance their property. 3 years ago, I put a second lower deck on my property. It looks out over my property as well as St. Christopher's and Parsippany Hills, the woods behind that. Now, if I look at what that is, if this is approved, this deck will now face what is arguably dumpsters and medical waste and the most industrial part of this beautiful project, which faces the back end, which will be looking right out my property. That's not property enhancement. Goal 3 says to encourage and provide buffer zones and transition areas to separate incompatible land. We have that today. That's what that property has. Converting R1 zone property to commercial does the opposite and eliminates those natural buffers. Goal 4, I think, is a fabulous one. Mitigate identified transportation problems, including traffic congestion and safety. We all know this project is a traffic and safety nightmare in the making. The town's traffic heat map and accident maps have showed that. Yet the so-called witness...
That's 5 minutes.
Okay.
You want to come back?
I'll stop. I'll be back.
He's going to come back. All right, Paul Wallach? Paul Wallach?
Sir, raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board, so help you God. Your name is Paul Wallach, and you reside?
355 Allentown Road, Parsippany, New Jersey.
Sir, you're sworn. You may testify.
Yes. I'd like to dedicate my time to Mr. Baxter and let him keep
Well,
going.
he's going to come back later, so this is your time.
That's all. I stand by him and I believe that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a Christina Baxter also? Christina?
Everyone said everything I needed to say.
So you're,
Okay. Mr. Tim, you want to come back up?
Thank you. Goal 5.
Wait, I gotta get my
Is to preserve the town's retail, commercial, corporate industries by reusing and repurposing existing building stock. We all know there is a lot. I mean, many of these new 2,000 or so units that are coming up are being done by reusing existing stock, existing inventory. That is a very logical thing to do here. But here, why are we considering approving and taking one of the most desired remaining wooded properties and turning it into commercial use when in fact there have been many, many vacant properties used already? Goal 6, develop, enhance, and connect parks and open space amenities so residents have access to passive and active recreational assets. Did not or should not the town consider acquiring this for open space? It's been up for sale for years, and it does link the neighborhoods to Parsippany Hills Fields and the Park Road parks. Exactly what the goal said. Goal 7, ensure that any prospective development preserves or enhances the town's environmental features. Between St. Chris, the Hills, and St. Elizabeth's, this is a 20 to 30 acre tract of land that is absolutely beautiful and is all linked. Unlike what I heard in testimony, these are not separate tracts. And the animals and the nature uses all of that. Goal 9, ensure our town has adequate municipal facilities and resources. Do we for this? Goal 11, encourage new development and redevelopment to take into account the aesthetic character of the community, to enhance the aesthetic appearance of the municipality. Enough said there. You know, before our first meeting, I attended the council meeting here where they planned and approved the master plan. The master plan was approved. What struck me, however, was the heartfelt comments from the mayor council to recognize and pay tribute to the passing of the planning board's chair, Bob Keller, and recognizing in many ways that it was his master plan. I don't know Bob, but I can see and feel and felt the passion of those comments. It was a moving tribute at that meeting, and it felt great about the work that was being done on the master plan. My point is that if it was sincere, and I believe it was, then this project, which so clearly and fundamentally flies in the face of more than half of the 13 goals, just shortly after this plan was approved, demonstrates that this project cannot get approved, period. I'm a firm believer that any property owner is entitled to develop their property within the guidelines of the zoning definition. If St. Christopher's wants to monetize and develop its land, it should do so, but do so as an R1 zone property. That supports the master plan and allows it to support most of those 13 goals. This project does not do that. For the last 14 years, Money Magazine, as part of a survey of the small towns in America, Parsippany has earned a top 20 small town in USA ranking. The survey is based on a number of factors, including quality of life. Parsippany has also earned an Arbor Day Foundation designated Tree City and has for 45 years. Another reason why this kid from Brooklyn called this the country. The town, the council, the mayor, and the zoning board, with a clear master plan, should be proud of these rankings, as all of the residents are. Yet this success also comes with responsibility. And the zoning board, in all good faith, in my opinion, cannot support turning this 13 acres and its beautiful buffer zone a home to dozens of deer, fox, hawks, and just yesterday, a cute but scared young black bear in that property, and turn that into a commercial concrete jungle filled with traffic, safety risk for our children, diminished property values, and a degraded quality of life. And I hope you agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of this witness by the board? Mr. Bovee, you have any questions? Okay, do you guys want to sum? I think that's the end of the list.
You mind?
What?
You mind?
I thought you were done.
Yes. We're gonna keep going.
Yeah, all right, come on up.
I have to take the...
No, okay, thank you. Could you say your name, sir?
Nicholas Humyak.
We know, we all know.
I'd like the quote from a Parsippany-Troy Hills 2019 master plan, protect drinking water supply. It is also important to note that residential growth in Parsippany, particularly as a result of meeting affordable housing obligations, will place additional pressure on the township's drinking water supply. Analysis conducted as a part of planning for future growth indicates that there is current water supply available for realistic development potential. Sites identified in the housing plan, but that other development and redevelopment opportunities will be constrained without additional water. Capacity may need be purchased, which means we may stand another increase in water and sewer, from third parties. We purchase water right now from 2 parties, or we wouldn't have enough water. And additional water transmission infrastructure may need to be constructed. A well rehabilitation and replacement plan should be developed, and groundwater recharge should be maximized through development review. Right now, we have 2 other diversions, or Parsippany wouldn't have enough water, believe it or not, because of the drawdown in the aquifer. So we have a diversion from Jersey City Municipal Authority and Morris County Municipal Authority. And that's to maintain our firm capacity, so if our greatest well is down, the town would still have enough water. But that cost us, and these companies are privately owned, so they can raise the price anytime they want. And I'd like to make a statement that I believe that this deal was non-transparent. And in the beginning, I believe Mr. Weiner couldn't even remember what mayor or attorney that he met with. But supposedly, the Board of Education only, not the town, not the citizens, the Board of Education was offered this property as a possible ball field. So rather than pass it over to the town for possible open space, it didn't come up, and all of a sudden it's up now. But, wait a minute, I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh boy. The property was never offered to the town by open space, for open space. But at the same time, the Board of Education spent, I believe, it was $4.7 million out of their budget that they found mysteriously for artificial turf. And then if I bring up the water view, we had to spend $4.7 million of our local open space money for something that could have been zoned as a non-structural stormwater component. So there was plenty of money there to purchase this, but Parsippany did everything wrong. And we were being ruled by a certain attorney at the time, and I think he had a lot to do with it. But this property, once again, should be reconsidered for open space to maintain our water supply, our water health, and the character of that neighborhood does not deserve to be changed forever by a for-profit, company who's gonna take the money from rich people, and then when they all die off, I don't know where the rest of the rich people are gonna come from, because there ain't gonna be many left. And I'll leave it at that.
Nick, come on back. Come on back, Nick. Nick,
No.
come on back.
No, please.
Any members of the board have any questions?
No, okay. No, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it. Okay, so we're done with the members of the public. This closes the public portion of this meeting. Mr. Vogel, Mr. Bryce, you want to sum?
Bryce, I guess, goes first.
Bryce, I don't,
Yes.
okay.
That's difficult.
Now you're.
Then you turn my camera back.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having us tonight and listening to the public. I almost kind of want to defer to Mr. Baxter, because he pretty much summed up the case in opposition very succinctly and very eloquently, and probably more eloquently than I can. But I do want to thank the board. Chairman, I thank you for your patience. I think that based upon the public comments here tonight, it's recognized that your task is an arduous, if not completely difficult one, and your public service is really, truly appreciated. And that service is not lost on this crowd. So given the length of this application and appreciation of the time that you have already dedicated to this matter, I'm going to try to keep my legal and factual points very brief. To state it succinctly, this application represents a proposal to wedge a massive development in a single-family residential area. The proposal seeks 156 units with over 200 beds that is directly adjacent to well-established residential neighborhoods. Just to give you a sense of scale, the Mars View Nursing Home, which is right on the border of Parsippany and Mars Township, is a 283-bed unit. But this development is not a nursing home. This development is comprised of both assisted living, memory care, and very importantly, independent living cottages. And somewhat confusingly, perhaps apartments as well, if you look at the plans. This is all on a 12-acre parcel, and it is a 12-acre parcel that the applicant readily admits is developable for single-family residences, just as permitted within the zone district. This particular application seeks a bifurcated approval, which means that fully developed and engineered site plans were not before you. This applicant is asking you to approve the use. This use requires that the applicant prove several things. First, the applicant must prove that there are special reasons that justify this particular variance, such as the site being particularly suited to the proposed use. Under the Medici case, which is cited at 107 NJ 1, 1987, the Supreme Court warned, and I'm paraphrasing this, that if the general social benefits of any individual use without reference to its particular location were to be regarded as an adequate special reason, a special reason almost always would exist for a use variance. To this point, the court there said that an enhanced burden of proof is required by the board to reconcile the variance being requested with the master plan. This leads to the second major factor and proof that is required in this case, which is the negative criteria. Namely, that no use variance, even one for an inherently beneficial use, may be granted without showing that the variance can be given without substantial detriment to both the public good, and that it will not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. In this case, it is conceded that a portion of the proposed development
is inherently beneficial. That portion is the memory care and assisted living portion. But this proposal includes a large portion that is high-density, independent living, which is not in and of itself inherently beneficial. In fact, age-restricted housing is not in and of itself recognized to be an inherently beneficial use. Age-restricted rental units outside public housing projects have never been held, to my knowledge, or by any court to be inherently beneficial. In zoning, there is no distributive property for an inherently beneficial use, meaning that just because a component of a development is inherently beneficial does not make the whole development application inherently beneficial itself. So why is this site particularly suited for the development? Is it the property size? Because it's available? What else? The board has to ask, is this really a good location? Because let's look at the location itself. Even if it was all inherently beneficial, the negative criteria cannot possibly be satisfied in this particular case. And before looking at any type of zoning concern or reconciling anything with a master plan or a zoning ordinance, let's look at the direct negative impact that this application would have on the general welfare of the community. As acknowledged by the applicant's own traffic engineer, this development would have a greater traffic impact on Route 202 than would a compliant single-family development within the same area. Common sense dictates that the traffic generated from over 50 independent living facilities, plus a parking demand of 187 vehicles, would be more than that created by about 13 homes. Add to this staff coming and going at shift change, add to it visitors. Also, we cannot forget the frequent accidents that occur right at the entrance and egress of this property. The board has to ask itself, would the proposed counterintuitive circulation pattern that the applicant proposes make this worse or better? What about the conflicting traffic that will continually be generated from the church, which is an ongoing operation? There's no doubt in this case that there will be a lighting impact. Can there be any doubt from anyone's experience that site lighting for a 12-acre development with 16-foot tall light poles will create more illumination than that typically associated with 13 or so single-family homes? Photons travel. Even if there are certain levels of illumination predicated or predicted for a property line, we know that light reflects, it scatters, and it creates glare. Drive by any site with light poles, and the source of the light itself is always visible. Here you have traffic light headlights that are also going to be circulating around the site at night. Now imagine that that is in your backyard. What is clear is that every type of nuisance, light, headlight reflections, odors from commercial kitchens and garbage, and noises will be intensified greater than what would be created by a permitted residential subdivision in this site. Now, regardless of these impacts, it is clear that this use is not justified for a zoning perspective. This is an R1 zone district. The permitted density here is 1 acre per dwelling. The application seeks a density that is 13 times greater than that is what is permitted within the zone district. The density proposed in some instances are greater than the densities allowed for multi-unit development in other parts of this township. To underscore that this development is not appropriate for the site, you need look no further than the township master plan. Not only does the master plan not recommend a change to this district or to this particular property, the master plan's first goal seeks to preserve the character and density of established residential neighborhoods by restricting incompatible land uses and increases in intensity. This application violates the first goal of the master plan. The second goal seeks appropriate housing and densities in appropriate locations where higher density is to be directed to transit and business corridors and to mitigate potential impacts on established single-family neighborhoods and traffic.
This application clearly violates this goal. I will not get into the other goals as Mr. Baxter so eloquently put forward to this board. To further demonstrate that this site is inappropriate for a use variance, the township, just within the last month or so, enacted another zoning ordinance that recognizes this type of use as a limited continuum of care community. The township zoned this type of use to be a conditional use within the ROL zone district. The township has addressed this use recently. You had a master plan that is less than 2 years old, and now you have an ordinance spoken from the governing body that places this use in the ROL zone district. And just by way of reference, that's ordinance 2022-19. In short, the variance for this use on this particular property cannot be reconciled with either the very recent master plan nor the recent zoning ordinance. It stands in direct contradiction of them. To the extent that the Sika case that you heard about was discussed, the board's standard is to evaluate the public interest at stake, identify the detrimental effects, determine if conditions can mitigate these effects, weigh the positives and negatives, and come up with a decision. While the opponents of this application do not believe that this application is subject to the Sika test because it is only partly inherently beneficial, even under the Sika test, were this board to employ it, the variance must be denied. The public interest at stake is not great. There are quite a few assisted living and memory care facilities within the direct area that do serve the needs of the community. Indeed, the township has now designated the ROL district to accommodate this type of use. But the detrimental effects of this development on established residential neighborhoods cannot be discounted. It is the applicant that still has the burden, even under the Sika test, to establish the negative criteria, namely that the detrimental effects do not outweigh the positive effects of the development and that the proposal does not impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. And what conditions can mitigate these effects on this neighborhood? The architect, I believe, indicated that's a 42.5-foot view of the primary building from Rita Drive. What other visual impacts will be in the back of these residents' properties? Indeed, the applicant would have you defer these concerns to a site plan phase after the use with a density is approved. In fact, and as earlier indicated, you do not have in front of you a site plan, but rather a variance concept plan. By way of example, the zone district only allows for an impervious coverage of 10% in a residential context, 65% for a conditional use, such as the church. But the plans here simply say 60+% for impervious coverage. There's no definition to it whatsoever. What is the impervious coverage? Certainly it's greater than the 1.2 acres of impervious coverage that you would be permitted with a residential development in this same area. And by the looks of the plan, it's much greater than the 65% allowed for conditional use. At 65%, that's over 8 acres of impervious coverage on a 12-acre lot. That would otherwise be limited to 1.2 acres for a residential subdivision. The stormwater management plan to deal with this, it's conceptual. It's subject to further soil testing. You have to ask yourself, is there enough information before this board to even decide that this property is physically particularly suited for this type of development? Whatever happened to the bar? I think that the testimony was, well, we'd like to have a bar if we're allowed to have it. I think that was the general answer given. If they want a bar, that requires specific notice.
I'll object. There's no application for a bar here, and I ordinarily would not interrupt, but when council gets to a point where he's talking about something entirely irrelevant that's unfair and brings up something that has to do with alcoholic beverages, for what purpose? Doesn't suit the purpose of this application or the issue before the board.
Mr. King?
I believe, wasn't there testimony that there would be a restaurant and there would be
A
potentially?
restaurant for the employees?
No, I think for the residents
For the
on
residents,
site,
yeah,
and I
but there was
think,
there's no question that request for a bar, no request for an alcoholic beverage license?
listen, I mean,
This is a red
I
herring and a
understand.
canard.
Well, the record is the record, but I believe that there was some testimony in other facilities that there was a,
There is no application for an alcoholic beverage license.
but I think what council is saying is this is a
Be clear about
conceptual, and you don't have that site plan yet, and theoretically you could, couldn't you?
This goes back to Mr. Bryce complained when we sent the notice out, that the notice was infirm because it didn't talk about alcoholic beverages being used on the property. And I made the statement at the first hearing that we are not seeking an alcoholic beverage license, and it has nothing to do with this. What it attempts to do is incite the people who are objecting to it and really mislead the board, and I object to it.
May I make a counter? I believe Mr. Les Stretch did testify to the very fact that if they're allowed to have a bar, they would like to have one.
Okay, that's the end of that part, right? Let's move on.
Well, it's the end of it to the extent that if that's really what they want, it undermines the very jurisdiction of this board to even hear their case. But let's get away from that, because even a year ago, over a year ago, there were a lot of questions that I had and this board had, even regarding state licensure, the requirements, the staffing levels. I think Mr. Chadwick had a lot of questions about that too. And the applicant indicated that they'd present an appropriate licensing expert to actually testify as to that, as to the licensing requirements and the staffing. Did you hear from one? What else didn't you hear from the applicant? You certainly didn't hear a detailed, rock-solid proposal that specifically addressed any type of licensing requirement, the staffing requirements, the staffing levels, the license type, and the full scale of amenities that are being proposed. So at the end of this, I'm going to just cite two general, very fundamental holdings as related to use variances. Property development should be accomplished by zoning ordinances and not variances. And two, use variances must be granted very sparingly and with great caution, as such variances impair sound zoning. In this case, the applicant simply did not meet its burden in justifying a project with a density 13 times greater than that is permitted within the zone district, a property that is conceitedly developable for single-family residents, and frankly, a developer's maximum of financial return through such a stunning residential density should not be borne on the backs of the already established residential neighbors. Once again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your patience, and I appreciate any type of consideration that you give to the objecting parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss.
In the anticipation I won't receive the same applause from Leonard, I will attempt to provide you with my thoughts with respect to an application that goes back to 21. This is our 10th session together, either in person or by Zoom. This application has survived COVID. It's extended beyond that. It is property in the R1 and the R3 zone, and it is an application sought for a use which is not permitted under the zoning ordinance. But that's what this board exists for. That's what your purpose is. That's what makes zoning constitutional. That's what makes our system work. The only reason that people's property is regulated with respect to use is if it has an opportunity to come before a board, this board, in order to obtain a use that is recognized by the law as having sufficient legal predicate. That's the reason that we're here. And, you know, what has been appealing, I guess, to the members of the public and to some of the people who have spoken is this idea about the master plan, and you're constrained by the master plan, and there are goals in the master plan, that are cited by people of the community and cited by Mr. Steck, who was their planner, and indeed cited by Mr. McDonough R. So what does that really mean? It means that anybody can take the master plan, loaded with simple goals, and pick and choose the ones they want. Pick and choose the ones they want that are supportive of their position. Pick and choose the ones that they can say, well, listen, because it isn't specifically addressing this particular use, it must be contrary. But if we really want to look at the master plan, you want to look at what it intended, you want to look at what Parsippany said in its master plan, let me give you a little read and take into context every comment that everybody has ever made in this room about the master plan. And I'll quote, "There was significant growth in 55 years and over population in Parsippany-Troy Hills. The 55 to 64 year category, which represents the new wave of empty nesters and/or families with older children, grew from 5,429 in 2000, 10.7% of the population, to 7,058 in 2010, 13%, a 30% increase. This group represents the first group of baby boomers born from 1946 through 1955. As this growing population segment ages, the township will have to address growing demands for services tailored towards seniors and those approaching senior citizen status. This will only increase the numbers of those persons 65 years and over in the near term, which increased from 11.2% of the population in 2000 to 13.7 in 2010. That's what your master plan said. You know, so what is this commercial interest that somebody has to monetize this property? Is that what it is? Is this a commercial enterprise? Or is it an opportunity to fulfill what your master plan talked about? You know, I dare say that everyone in this room would be in favor of taking care of seniors and taking care of the infirm. That's everybody. What are they really saying? What does everybody here really recognize? We really want to take care of our seniors. We want to take care of our infirms, but we don't want it in our backyard. It may be an inherently beneficial use, but don't put it here. Put it by some industrial park. Don't put it where people want to live, where the elderly want to live. Put it somewhere where we don't have to see them. You know, there's an old adage, a society is judged by how it treats its elderly and its infirm. And that's the question we have here today. Before we even come to the legal issue about inherently beneficial use or whether or not this is an appropriate site, you have to confront the issue that there is this need, there is this cohort in our society, and there is a place for it somewhere in Parsippany. And the question is, do we stand up and say, whoever comes before you and wants to put it somewhere, we don't want it in our backyard? There's a comment made by council that for the first time, the mayor and council came to the conclusion and enacted an ordinance in 2019 to create the ability to have assisted living kinds of facilities in Parsippany. Has any one of them been built? The answer is no. Here is the opportunity. In the specific zone, in the RLL zone, no. But an opportunity to put it where? In a pristine residential community, or in a residential community that has a high school in the midst of it and a church that fronts on Littleton Road. You want to talk about particularly suited? Are senior citizens particularly suited to sit next to an industry, or next to a shopping center, or next to retail, commercial? Were they particularly suited to live in a neighborhood where there are other homes and to enjoy their extended years? And so when you look for a site, do you go into a single-family subdivision in the middle and say, carve out 5 lots? Maybe not. But when you have a piece of property that's behind the church, already in institutional use, and adjacent to a school, then maybe you have to say to yourself, you know what? This site is particularly suited. It has all those elements. It has the elements of being adjacent to residential, being adjacent to institutional public uses. It's a place where we can have senior citizens live in a circumstance that befits what our master plan related to. Let me talk about inherently beneficial use. Mr. Chadwick in his report admitted, and Mr. Bryce admitted this evening, that both the assisted living and the memory care are inherently beneficial uses. And so what their indication is, or by Mr. Bryce, is that the independent living are not, in and of themselves, part of a use that is inherently beneficial. And that's just not true. And the reason it's not true is because the law is to the contrary. The law has been very clear. I provided to you early on, I believe, before we even started any testimony, I provided you with a memorandum. And in that memorandum, I cited to you a case, the Princeton case, which indicated that if the basic components of a use are inherently beneficial, and there is a part of that use that in and of itself is not inherently beneficial, in this case, the independent units, the board should consider the attitude of that separate independent living function together with the portions of the use that are inherently beneficial. So, what did the court say in the Princeton case? The zoning board must, 1, identify the proposed use and delineate its function. Here, assisted living and memory care. Establish how the proposed use is integrated in the function of the inherently beneficial use. That is, how is this facility to work? How is the independent units going to be, and I'll read it again, integrated into the core function of the inherently beneficial use? You heard the testimony tonight. There is this continuum of care that runs from the independent into both the assisted living and the memory care. The Princeton case stands very firmly for that. In addition to which, questions have been asked on several occasions whether or not the independent living aspect of this facility would have an obligation for low and moderate housing to partially fulfill the township's unmet need. And the courts have held that to the extent that any housing satisfies any part of that need, there is a public purpose served, and it constitutes a portion of an inherently beneficial use. That's simply the law. Does it make any sense? Of course it makes sense. Now, with respect to what this particular use is, I gave you in my memorandum several cases that are quite similar here, and I don't want to read them again. I just commend to you to reread what I gave you. The J-Bar case cited all over the country, not just in New Jersey, for the proposition that congregate care, that is, where there's a symbiotic relationship between independent living and assisted living or nursing, where there's a symbiotic relation, that is an inherently beneficial use. The court be very clear. As a matter of fact, what was said very, very simply by the court was that that there's no argument that could be made that would indicate that it's not part of an inherently beneficial use. If that is true, if it is in fact part of inherently beneficial use, the positive criteria that is talked about by Mr. Bryce is not relevant, because the statute provides that an inherently beneficial use in and of itself satisfies the positive criteria. And much is always said about the Sika case. What is the Sika case? The Sika case really is just a diagram for the board to follow in determining what its obligation is and how it should treat an inherently beneficial use. How it should treat precisely what this application is. When somebody comes before you and says, you know what, I have a good idea. I want to take care of the citizens who are seniors, and I have a place for them, but your zoning ordinance hasn't as yet allowed for the construction of it. I have a location. How is the Board of Adjustment to evaluate that location? And the Sika test says, and I'll go through the four, it's worth going through the 4 elements of that test. One is to evaluate the public interest to be served. I gave you that public interest. I read from your master plan what that public interest is. 2, identify any consequences or in granting of the variance. What are the consequences here? Tell me what you don't have any factual testimony before you with respect to what is supposedly called the negative criteria. They talk about lights, they talk about drainage, they talk about plantings. Those are all
Excuse
functions.
me. Please give this man your attention, and I don't want to hear any rustling, any noises, okay? We let everybody else speak. It's his turn. And you may not like what he's saying, but he has every right to say it, okay? Go ahead, Mr.
All those are functions of site plans. Those functions of site plans are not considered by a board at the time of a bifurcated use variance. The third is to consider what conditions may be imposed to mitigate any of those consequences. What are the consequences? Traffic. We provided you with the only traffic report. And what did we do? One need only look back to the beginning of this application. If you'll recall, when we first came in, there was an access onto Rita Drive, and there was a hue and cry by substantially more people than are here in the room tonight. There was a reason that the initial meeting was adjourned, and we subsequently did it by Zoom. What did we do in order to address that? We changed the access. We terminated all of Rita Drive's attitude to this particular project, and we have oriented all of the traffic onto Littleton Road through the church property. And we provided you with a report marked into evidence, the testimony of Mr. Vertshurst, who testified with respect to it, and the ultimate conclusion that he reached was that with the traffic now to be traversing through the church and to reversing what entrance and exit drives are to the church, the traffic on Littleton Road will be enhanced and improved. That was his testimony, and that's before you. And by the way, that is unrefuted at this point. And why do I bring that up at this point? Because when I'm talking about the Sika test, where the court said, very simply, consider the conditions which may be imposed upon negate the adverse consequences. So if there are any adverse consequences, you have the opportunity to impose them, and And in this case, the traffic itself is a benefit with respect to what exists on Littleton Road. The only basis for a Board of Adjustment to deny an inherently beneficial use occurs if there is a specific finding that the detriments substantially outweigh the benefits that are imposed by the inherently beneficial use. You know, it's quite easy for somebody to stand up and say, well, what benefit do I get out of this? I mean, I live in town, I lived here all my life. What benefit do I see out of it? Well, it's not any individual benefit. It's the obligation that the society has. It's the obligation that you have under the law. The proposal here is one that is consistent with those requirements imposed for an assisted living project. A CCRC doesn't exist within the municipality, and a functioning facility such as this would by its very nature have a density greater than the zone in which it's put. So the test really is not how is the density of this particular project measured against the density of what somebody could build for a project that is sanctioned by the board, by the ordinance. The test is whether or not this inherently beneficial use presents a density consistent with such a use as provided in your ordinance. And I dare say that with respect to the density of this particular use at this location, it is consistent with the use that is proposed and is consistent with both the existence of the church and the existence of the school. It is not aberrant. It does not change the nature of the community. There are a couple of facts that people just seem to want to ignore. You know, in the single-family zone, the R1, the R3, heights of buildings are permitted to up to 35 feet. That's the usual height for a single-family home. Goes up 2 stories, 35 feet. What are the heights that are proposed here? On the cottages that are proposed, which are, by the way, little single families, but not full-grown houses. They're 16 feet. The other building is 21 feet. And the amenity building, which is the highest building on the site, which is pushed away from any adjacent residential area, that is to provide the greatest buffer, is itself within the 35 feet. So the buildings that are proposed are no higher than the R1 and the R3 zone. The buffers that are proposed all along are a minimum of 50 feet, and in some cases 120 feet, testimony indicates, to the nearest house. Is that incompatibility? Why do I cite these facts? Why? Because if you're going to look at the negative criteria, it's got to be based upon fact. We have given you the facts. And I understand that people who look at an application and they view it in the most negative light, come up and they provide to you this horror stories about what it's going to be. But those are not facts. They're concerns, and those are concerns that can be met and would be met on the occasion of a site plan approval. I could go on. I could give you more citations. I could give you more. I could give you more of what the facts are. But in Jaguar, the court said that the best of each of us has in us is what we have to really present when we examine whether or not we're going to provide a facility for seniors and for those who would occupy a facility that has both independent living, because that's what the case concerned, assisted living, and memory care. I commend to you not just the law, I commend you the common sense. I understand that no one wants change. People would love to see the property stay in its natural state. That's not going to happen. That's not really what our law provides. People have a right to use their property. In this case, we have a unique circumstance. We have a church that is saying to the citizens of Parsippany, we have an opportunity to utilize undeveloped land that is sitting fallow to serve our senior citizens and our infirm. That's an opportunity that we can provide within the context of the zoning. And just always remember that any of the concerns with respect to the site and its possible impact on adjacent properties can always be ameliorated and taken care of in a site plan application, which can only come within the context of the granting of the variance. I could go on, but I will not. I want to, of course, I'm like everybody else. I mean, everybody thanks you for your time, thanks you for not only the time, but the thought and consideration. I just ask you to look at it in the context of not how many people show up and say, I object because I live here, and not in the context because somebody said it's a commercial venture. It is a venture for the benefit of all, and it's your opportunity to create that and make it realistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vogel. I would just like to make one comment before we go into conference. There's been mentions of the master plan and how the master plan was rewritten a couple of years ago. I'm going to take you back about 25 years ago when Mimi Letts first became mayor. And I think I was like in my first or second year as chairman. And she sat down with me over lunch and explained to me that I shouldn't be granting any variances. I should be following the master plan. Well, that's 100% untrue. Our job is to evaluate every application on the evidence that's presented and determine whether a variance is warranted or not. That's our job, okay? So, and I'm not going to say forget what the master plan says, but it's our job to interpret the request and whether or not it's valid. So, do I have a motion to go into conference?
Second, Justice.
Thank you. It's got to be a volunteer here. Mr. Kaplan, you look like you...
Do you want to go first? I can yield to the gentle lady next to me.
Sure.
I'm going to try to be brief because it's getting late. Mr. Chair, the negative criteria impacts of this multi-unit residential proposal, in my opinion, not only significantly outweighs any positive alleged beneficial impact, it absolutely eclipses it. And this is an excessively dense proposal that, to your point you just made, in my opinion, does not warrant a variance. It would be more suitable in an area that could effectively be served by a robust transit system and other more convenient located services. In my opinion, the applicant failed to prove that it is aligned with the town's master plan, meaning it failed to prove that a variance is warranted. I agree with previous statements made that this is extremely high density in nature, and it smacks in the face of the overall characteristics and aesthetics, and to a degree, the functionality of a long-established standing neighborhood. It's not cohesive, in my opinion, and to the applicant's position that Littleton Road, the evidence was presented that traffic would be enhanced along Littleton Road and it would be improved, and that was a refuted argument made. I respectfully say it's hard to believe because right now, Littleton is playing out in real time to be a horror story. During peak hours, you just have to be there. And in peak hours, around 4:30, and this is recent, people are traveling anywhere between 6 miles per hour and 12 miles per hour and barely traveling 10 feet in a 5 to 7 minute period. And so granting this variance is literally just, again, I'm going to use a terminology I used on the previous applications, swinging a sledgehammer and just ripping apart this neighborhood and gumming up the traffic situation there. The applicant also contended that the density of this proposal most recently is consistent to the church and the school as it stands now. Again, I respectfully disagree because the dynamics and the hours of operation of the property as it stands now is nowhere near what the proposal proposes. And so I just feel that the conversion of this land is nowhere remotely to the point where we should be giving out variances. And to be giving out a variance here, it makes me question why do we have a master plan in the first place? I will be voting no.
The residents were nice enough to thank us tonight. I do want to thank them for being here. It is important to us to hear your perspectives, and the "not in my backyard" phrase was thrown around. I'm okay with NIMBYs. You have a right to be a NIMBY, and that's not offensive to me. This is your home, and you take it seriously, and it's our job to consider that perspective as well. I do think there are significant problems with this application. The density, 1 acre per unit, or one unit per acre versus, I think it was 17 per acre. And I am going to refer to the master plan. It is a guiding document. It's not the end-all be-all, but it does give us some guidance. Goal 1, it's been said several times, preserve the density and character of that neighborhood. Not going to happen. Preserve the aesthetics of that neighborhood. The lighting issue was raised several times. That's not appropriate for that neighborhood. Somewhere in the master plan, it was mentioned, a higher density housing should be close to amenities. This project is isolated. The master plan mentions the responsibility to mitigate traffic. Mr. Vogel said at one point, we need to use common sense. I'm going to use common sense in this instance. 187 parking spaces probably is going to they're expecting 187 cars. And listen, I was a Parsippany-Troy West Little League coach for at least 10 years. I was very sad when my turn was done and my kids were done. The one thing I was not sad about was driving to Parsippany-Troy West for baseball games, rushing to try and beat the traffic, hoping my kid wasn't late. Goal 10 states we need to consider whether a project assures sufficient capacity for water. This is a big mystery on this one. And I keep hearing that there's not enough water in this area. That's not something I'm willing to chance. To me, this project is not consistent with the goals or spirit of this guiding document. In the same way, the applicant chose this location over other locations. It's my opinion that the application should be built in other places instead of this location. in closing, I really do not see that listen, I think the negative criteria outweigh the positive criteria, and the detriments outweigh the benefits on this project. I'm a no vote on this.
If you want to keep it down this end, I'll,
Yeah, the lefties first.
yeah, we'll go first. So I can sit here and I can echo everything Ms. Snyder and Mr. Kaplan have said. I agree with it. Their words are right to the point of what's been going through my head from the first time sitting in on the Zoom meetings and then watching the previous ones that I wasn't here for. So while the desired use of this property is admirable, I have to go right to the number of goals that is in direct contradiction to the master plan. Now, while I agree with Mr. Irakin, it doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all. I have 2 young children that go to school on the east side, Parsippany East, by the way. They go to the east side. Now, I drive my son across town to go up to Central Park for his soccer practices, and we have to leave in the same town we live in. We have to leave a half hour early to get there because of that road. Now, adding 187 parking spots, as Mr. Kaplan said, I can only imagine, and again, my opinion would be that I'm gonna have to leave 45 minutes earlier. As a number of people said, they leave for work in the morning, and luckily I don't have to drive that in the morning. I leave earlier than that. But my biggest piece of this that has a negative impact is the fact that I do have 2 children. And the fact that folks in this room have children that have to walk that road. And adding to the traffic and the safety concerns of those children is my most important point of this. So that's going to compel me to vote no as well.
Bernie, you want to go next?
Sure, why not? The hour's getting late.
Can everybody hear him?
Yeah. And number 2, pretty much what I'm thinking has already been said. So the bottom line is I'm going to be a no vote on this application.
So I guess I've been on the board about 7 years, and I got to tell you, I think this is the most difficult case, one of the most difficult cases I've heard. I think in my thinking, I've been on both sides of it in my head. When I heard Mr. Baxter, he had me convinced. I heard Mr. Priest, he had me convinced, and even Mr. Vogel then said what he had to say, and I'm saying, he's making good points too. It's really a hard case. And I'm gonna think with my head and not with my heart, because my heart says it is a very, very admirable business you're in. I think it makes total sense. I have friends that are going through this now with trying to find places for their elderly parents, and the step-up concept, and all your concepts really make sense to me. But I just can't get past the fact that you are putting a business in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And I think my colleagues have totally articulated my position as well. There are other places, and that's not why I'm saying no. I just think that putting it in a residential area, you have not overcome the negatives in my head for me to change my mind and to say yes. So to reiterate, I agree with my colleagues who have explained it well on my behalf, and I will also be voting no.
Mr. Reddy?
In my opinion, this is the longest application, maybe more than 10 rounds, and you guys have brought a very good plan and presented well. Unfortunately, the project is in a place where all the residents are negative opinion. It is all the neighbors want the senior citizens to be there, but the thing is, they don't want the noise and the assisted living, so many things, negative criteria there for them. Any project that need a variance and come on the board, my opinion, it has to blend with the neighborhood. They have to accept it. They have to welcome the project. That, in my opinion, significant number of residents are here. They are dead against this project. So I'm very sorry. I have no choice but to say no.
Well, as maybe most of you know, I'm the oldest one up here, so it's probably good for me to go last. I will say that, pardon me?
You're as old as dirt.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting older all the time, but I'm still here. I would open by saying, J-Bar case says the best in us. This town has a lot of best in us, okay? And I believe that most of the residents, and yours truly, do want to care for our seniors, okay? And this town does that. I also think the applicant did a remarkable job, frankly, in presenting your company values and principles, and I hope you come to Parsippany and run your business here. However, like they were saying, the rest of the group here is saying, I believe right now that keeping with what we're to do here, to grant a variance for use in this site, I will also be joining the rest of the group. In fact, my vote doesn't matter right now, but anyway, I'll be voting no. So.
Too big, too many units. If the applicant wanted to come back with a smaller application, something more residential looking and making it blend into the area, the days of 1 acre lots, I don't think they exist anymore. Maybe it's me, okay? So that argument I don't think holds much water, but I think the significant amount of units per acre is just not acceptable, so.
Could I make one more comment too for the residents? I mean, frankly, I know that area well. I lived in Sedgefield a number of years, I live on Parsippany-Troy, but my point will be, some of your arguments about that 12 acres is going to be developed somehow, okay? And the animals are gonna be moved, the trees are gonna be cut, so those arguments, frankly, I heard them and I agree with you and I agree with the concerns and all the other stuff, but that does not overcome the fact that that's not gonna be happening anyway. So get ready for the next step, because that property is gonna be developed, so, and
as I've told members of the public before, the devil that you know is probably not as bad as the devil you may get. And we've had that happen in town, where neighbors fought a development and ended up with something worse. So, I'd just like to make a comment. I know I get, my Sicilian temper up from time to time, and I apologize for that. But I run this meeting and I want to run it in the proper manner. You guys are one of the best audiences I've had in 35 years, okay? We've dealt with some areas of the town, and people are not reasonable. I think you people are very reasonable. I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate the amount of time that you've all taken to be with us. On that note...
And I didn't have to grab you once.
That's right. John didn't have to pull me back over the counter once. Huh?
don't we have to?
I said I'm voting no. Motion to come out of conference. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Can we do a resolution of denial right now? Yeah. Okay, can someone frame a resolution of denial?
Mr. Kaplan, go for it.
In application number 1956, GTP Acquisitions LLC, 1050 Littleton Road, Block 166, Lot 96, in the R1 zone. I recommend that the board, how am I doing this? The board deny the concept plan D variance for assisted independent living apartments and cottages and memory care residents.
So you'll be voting,
You're voting yes, because I recommended
Everybody understands that. It's a yes vote now.
Yep.
If you vote yes, you're saying no.
Yes to
Excuse me?
say no.
If you vote yes, you're saying no.
That's correct. There's a second to that motion?
Yeah, Jaskowitz.
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Mr. Berkowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Jaskowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan.
Yes.
Mr. Reddy.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Willand.
Yes.
And Chairman Ibrahim.
Chairman
Oh,
Arkin?
yes, I'm sorry. And the motion is denied. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation. We're here 2 nights a month. If there's nothing on TV, you want to come and have some fun, come out and enjoy. Bernie, good night. Good night, Bernie.
Yeah.
Can we get a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Do you have transcripts on this?
Thank you all for gathering here
Is
today.
there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jerry.
Yes, we did. Second. All in favor?
Good night, Peter.
Aye.
What's the next meeting? Dave doesn't know.
Oh.
No, I feel like a friend. I cannot. Hi, Chad.
No, not those. No, that's, Because the one with the French name is,
Not mine. Oh, I don't know whose it is. That's your pen for this.
yeah, we did it tonight. You know what, when we got to 10 o'clock, I said, we gotta make it.
Yes.
We had no choice.
Yes. 12.